GB News. I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight scheduled to carry UK asylum seekers to Rwanda is cancelled minutes before takeoff.
Good morning. It's 6 a.m. on the 15th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, this is what we've got for you on this Wednesday. The first asylum flight to Rwanda was left grounded following a last-minute ruling from the European Court of Human Rights.
Home Secretary Priti Patel said the government would not be deterred from doing the right thing and promised to deliver the plans needed to control our nation's borders as she prepares for the next flight.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced a refreshed case for Scottish independence. She says the referendum will take place late next year with or without Westminster approval.
8 million homes across the UK will receive their first cash instalment as part of the government's cost of living payment plan. £324 will be paid to low-income households on the 14th of July.
OK, that's what's leading the news. Leading our discussion will be you. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
And a reminder, you can subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube and get all the latest on the big stories everyone's talking about.
So on this Wednesday morning, we can report that last night, the first asylum flight to Rwanda was cancelled 30 minutes before takeoff.
Yeah, the European Court of Human Rights blocked the removal of one of the 7 passengers, leading to a series of legal challenges and the removal of the remaining 6 on board.
Now, the plane is reported to have cost £500,000, and that doesn't include legal fees. And there is the Home Secretary saying she was disappointed. However, she added,
preparation for the next flight begins now. Well, for more, let's speak to barrister and writer Stephen Barrett. Stephen, really interesting this, because at the end of the day, this had been through the British courts, it had gone to the Court of Appeal, and it was cleared to go. And yet it's an 11th hour intervention from the ECHR in a post-Brexit Britain. Fascinating quandary here. Who governs this country, in your opinion?
Yes, I mean, that is an issue. We had seen a really detailed approach by the 3 layers of our legal system. We had seen the High Court addressing this. We had seen Lord Justice Singh in the Court of Appeal do a brilliant immediate, I mean, he did live law, so he gave an immediate judgment on this and its complexity, and he was vindicated when the Supreme Court agreed with him. And from a traditional point of view within our legal system, that was all done. And then right at the last minute, last night, in comes the European Court of Human Rights. And that is surprising. Under their own test, this is what they call interim measures. And under their own test, it's supposed to be a very high bar for them to actually get involved in stuff. But nonetheless, they have waded in and stopped the flight. And that is, well, that is interesting. And it adds an additional layer of complexity to how things function in this country and how law functions.
Go on.
Here's my point.
Yeah.
Right. So we listen to this and we say, oh, yes, they weighed in and whatever. And you ask the question, who governs this country? Stephen, what if we just ignored what they said and took off last night?
Goodness, don't start with the easy questions. In theory, we would then be open to some form of discipline by the European Court of Human Rights. I'm not entirely sure what form that sort of punishment, if you like, would take. But we have voluntarily, as a country, decided to be bound by this court. So we are showing it due deference and respect because we have chosen to do that. That is our choice. And I think it's right that that's highlighted, that everybody knows that. It's not essential that we're members of it. Many sophisticated Western democracies are not under the jurisdiction of this court. It's up to us whether or not we want to be.
But do you think this might change that, Steve? Sorry to interrupt you, but do you think, given that, you know, the government who've been voted in on a mandate to try and get a grip of migration and illegal immigration, I should say, and have been, you know, probably got a great deal of popular support for this policy, do you think this might mean that British people say, we don't want to be a part of the ECHR anymore, we're in post-Brexit Britain? In fact, could this be a bit of a knee-jerk response that we say we're going to leave?
Well, what the British people say about the European Court of Human Rights and our continuing membership of the Convention is up to the British people. And it is entirely possible that they may take a view on this, given what has happened. And they're absolutely entitled to do it. What I don't want to do and what I won't do is tell the British people how they ought to think about the European Court of Human Rights. It's absolutely not for lawyers to tell people what they should do as their politics. And that's a theme I return to again and again and again. And all I can do is explain what has happened so that people are aware, and then they can make up their own political choices.
Well, that's our role as well, Steve Barrett. And, you know, undoubtedly people will be watching and listening at home and will have their views on this. And we will try to reflect those throughout the course of the morning. But for now, Steve Barrett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Isabel said, your views, and I'm sure you have got one on of this, as Isabel so aptly put it, who does run this country? And we thought leaving Europe meant leaving things like the European Court of Human Rights behind. I mean, obviously it didn't, but many people may have thought that it did with their sort of controls. So we want your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at gbnews.
It's just the fact that our domestic courts cleared it and then the ECHR said it's not lawful. That's the shocker, isn't it? It's just, you know, which laws are right and wrong. And, you know, what are we in post-Brexit Britain? All of these subjects to be chewed over, as Eamonn says, throughout the course of the morning. But for now, on to a slightly less controversial subject.
Oh, don't know about that.
Scottish independence, anyone?
So, Nicola Sturgeon has unveiled a new path towards Scottish independence. She calls this an indisputable mandate for a second referendum.
Well, Downing Street responded by saying it is certainly not the time for another vote and the focus should be on larger issues. Well, Alice Denby from the political newspaper CapX joins us now for more on all of this. Look, you know, Nicola Sturgeon's always going to be banging this drum, isn't she? That's what her party is there for. But does she have a point that this once-in-a-generation vote could arguably be called again, because the situation's changed? They were taken out of the European Union.
So it's twice in a generation,
But since then, they've left the EU. The Scottish people we know didn't want to do that. They have a right to have another say on this. That would be her argument.
No, I think this reaps of opportunism from Nicola Sturgeon. She wants to go now because she wants to be going up against a weakened Boris Johnson. She wants to be doing it at a time when we're in a cost of living crisis, so the economic arguments don't seem to loom so large. People might think, well, you know, it can't be any worse than it is now. I don't think she's got a mandate for this. She didn't secure a majority in the Holyrood elections. And, as I say, completely opportunistic.
Timing, OK, so you're saying the timing is all important with this one. My experience of this is the younger you are, the more likely you are to vote for Scottish independence. Does that not augur well for her?
Yeah, I think Nicola Sturgeon has done a good job of kind of branding independence as a sort of like woke, progressive position. But in fact, it's the opposite of that. Putting up borders where they don't exist is regressive. Nationalism is essentially a regressive idea. And I think if people, especially young people, think hard about this, they should realise that. And they should be looking at her domestic agenda on things that really affect young people, like education. And they should think really hard about how they vote if such a referendum does occur.
What would happen to Scotland if it did go independent? Can it stand on its own 2 feet? I mean, we know that they would want to rejoin the EU, but they probably wouldn't reach the economic threshold to be accepted in. I mean, there's lots of challenges for them to go independent.
Yeah, I think it would be very challenging for Scotland. Of course it could stand on its own 2 feet. Of course Scotland is a great country, and of course it would manage to be independent, but I think it would face enormous challenges. I think it would be immensely weakened on the international stage. For example, it wants to get rid of nuclear weapons. What's that going to do in a dangerous world? And I think it would be a disaster. We've seen how badly things are going in Northern Ireland, where there's a domestic trade border. Nicola Sturgeon has no answer to what trade between England and Scotland would be like.
So there would have to be a hard border at Carlisle or Gretna Green or something then, would there?
There would have to be some kind of border. She doesn't have the answers.
Alice, let me ask you this. People will say, right, there you are with the answers today, and a lot of people may be looking at the screen and they'll be saying, she doesn't sound Scottish. What's it got to do with her? So, I mean, the one thing that will get up people's noses if they're from Ireland and they're talking about nationalism or unity, and Scotland exactly the same, as people who are not from those countries talking about it. Why would you feel that you've got a say in this, or that anybody outside Scotland would have a say in this?
Well, because we're a United Kingdom, we're all British. And if you want to ask for me personally, my husband's Scottish, I'm English. I feel very strongly that we're a family.
You feel invested in this?
Absolutely, 100%. My daughter's half Scottish. We're all British, we're a family.
But it also would have implications for people in other parts of the British Isles. I mean, you know, you talk about them wanting to go nuclear, but all of our nuclear deterrence and the building of it takes place in Scotland. So what would that mean for us in England if Scotland went independent? That's what I mean. So we all do have a vested, position on whether or not they go independent.
You're absolutely right. It's not just a decision for Scotland. This is a decision for the whole of the United Kingdom, and it would be. It affects us all, absolutely.
So if you think there was a vote within the rest of the United Kingdom saying, should Scotland remain part of the United Kingdom, what way do you think that would go?
That's difficult to say. I think there's certainly a strong contingent of English people who think, well, Scotland can go
their own furrow.
Plough their own furrow, since they keep complaining about it. But no, I think we should all work hard to preserve our union. That's.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, Scottish people. I find that Scottish people who live down south here, in London or whatever, are all quite pro-union. They're quite pro-union by and large. I'm just thinking.
Know a very ardent, independent Scottish person.
Don't you be naming names.
I won't be naming names, of course not. But I mean, every day it's an abusive relationship. We want to be released from you.
Well. And is that the case? Do you think different if you're an expat type thing? Do you think differently on it? So, Alice, very interesting having her views today. And your views, always welcome. Do get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. And thank you very much for doing that.
An email's just come in on this subject. John Lumgare. I'm Scottish. I say let her have it, because I can tell you she will lose and it will finish her. So bring it on.
Okay. Well, thanks very much indeed. Alice, thank you. Always good to have you on board. Thank you very much indeed. I must say, you look as if you've been to Hawaii or something. What? Do you look...
I feel a bit self-conscious, if I'm honest. Well, we're going to Ascot later, so I might have enhanced my tan.
Your complexion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not overpowering you with the
the Cruella de Vil look. It works very, very well today. I last saw that in 101 Dalmatians. It's lovely.
I already feel self-conscious. I don't know.
It's not everybody could get away with being as dotty as that.
What was it you said this morning? Oh, I'm not sure many people would read the news in that dress.
But that's what makes you different.
Yeah,
remember that.
Exactly.
Remember that. You don't get these big dots on the BBC. Remember that. Right, OK. Coming up to 6:15. Thank you for your company. This is Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster here on GB News at breakfast. Let's bring you up to date with the news.
So the Prime Minister will face MPs today for the first time since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the powers to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes as no big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
The Department for Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment. That's going to happen on the 14th of July. 326 quid. It'll be an instalment paid into your bank account if you are from a low-income household on benefits. Then there will be a second payment, £650 will follow in the autumn. Your views on that, is it enough?
Pharmacists are to be able to help spot potential cancer cases as part of a new NHS trial. It's hoped that giving pharmacists more power to send patients for cancer scans and tests will help to improve the speed of diagnosis for many. Hundreds in England will take part in the pilot scheme, and pharmacies will be invited to apply to be involved soon.
Now, airlines have been ordered to cancel enough summer flights now in order to avoid last-minute notice of grounding or cancelling your trip closer to the departure date.
Yeah, so we're asking this morning, what does it mean for your summer holiday? Travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder, joins us in the studio. What does it mean, Simon?
Well, this is a letter that the government finally sent out yesterday afternoon. The Department for Transport and the Civil Aviation Authority, which is actually part of the DFT, with a whole list of instructions for the airlines. And what they want to do is, quote, de-risk the summer. That means, well, at the moment, if you look at today's cancellations on EasyJet out of Gatwick, more than 40 that I've counted, most of those will have been notified a day or two in advance.
Yeah.
The government says, well, that's ridiculous. And in particular, we're also really worried about on-the-day cancellations. So therefore, we want you to cancel, and this will be in the case of EasyJet, particularly from Gatwick, I would estimate, and this is me, not the government, cancelling maybe 10% of flights. That will mean that there will be some people, and don't do anything yet, don't panic yet, everybody, there will be some people who will get an email saying, sorry, your flight to Malaga in July has been cancelled.
OK, so we will have had notice on that. Would there be a situation, I mean, will you be able to get a refund? Will you be able to rebook something else? I mean, what you don't want is your summer holiday cancelled, them holding on to your money for ages, you not being able to do anything about it and make alternative arrangements. What way will it work out?
Well, fortunately, in the same sternly worded letter, which an awful lot of us who like to support the consumer were glad to see, they said, by the way, just a reminder, you know, when you cancel a flight, you've got to get Eamonn to his destination as soon as you possibly can, i.e. the same day. And if you, the cancelling airline, don't have a flight, you've actually got to pay for him to fly with somebody else. And that is, for almost everybody, going to be the best solution. So,
yes, but is that going to happen? Or would there be other flights?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there will always be flights at some price.
So I'm booked on EasyJet to go to Faro, say, for instance. They would be under an obligation to move me to Aer Lingus or TUI or British Airways or whoever.
Yeah, well, they would, except that what I think we're going to see is that, let's suppose most flights, I mean, good example, Faro, also Malaga, Alicante, Palma, really, really popular airports, loads of flights. They will say, sorry, you were booked on the 9 o'clock, you can go on the 7 o'clock or the 1 o'clock. And that will be happening an awful lot. And so actually it will be a slight nuisance, but it won't be particularly material. You won't get any compensation, by the way, if they let you know 2 weeks ahead. And if they can't get you there, and if it's to, let's say Preveza in Greece, which doesn't have that many flights, then they would, absolutely have to get you there.
Well, I think it's bad enough for cancellation and the disruption for any of us as adults, but to be travelling with children as well.
Well, you know, actually in half term, one of my really good friends, she's got 3 kids, one of whom's disabled, and they were stuck on the tarmac for hours and hours and hours. It's just terrible. But so that's good news in terms of the summer holidays. Looking ahead, it looks a bit of disruption, but at least your flight probably
At least you know where you stand.
In the short term, how long till this will kick in, do you think?
Well, very good question. I would expect at the moment the airlines, because they spent yesterday morning at the Transport Select Committee, the Business Select Committee being grilled by MPs, they would have got this letter yesterday afternoon, and they'll I mean, it's basically aimed at EasyJet. They, in the league table of cancellations, British Airways way at the top, but they are cancelling weeks, sometimes months in advance.
Yeah.
EasyJet are the people who are cancelling a day or two, sometimes even an hour or two in advance.
Hey, look, I want to get a general picture from you here. I know you sit on a committee, and a government advisory committee that we were going to talk to you about yesterday. But British Airways, in particular, in terrible decline. A lot of people would say because of their Spanish owners. Ryanair, looks like there are going to be strikes there in the summer. British Airways, they're talking about striking as well. How did it all become such a mess at our airports?
Right, well, there's a chronic labour shortage, as you know. Loads of people left the industry, and of course the people who left the industry during COVID were the people who were being offered the most money, and they would be the people with 20 years experience.
Yeah.
They're exactly the people that you need now, and they've either got new jobs in retail, on the railways, or they're enjoying the garden right now. And that is the profound problem. But the message that I was trying to get across in this committee meeting was the vast majority of people will have their holiday as planned and have a fantastic time. Even if you're flying on EasyJet today from Gatwick, which is where the maximum kind of pressure points are, the vast majority will get away. I'm not for one moment diminishing the problems of people who might turn up and suddenly find their flights 3 hours late or cancelled completely. But the overwhelming chances are you're going to get away and have a lovely time.
Is there a tactic in any way where you can lessen the effect of all of this by using Southampton Airport or Bristol Airport instead of Heathrow or Birmingham or Manchester? Or
No, the best tactic, Eamonn, is simply to know your rights, and that is as soon as that cancelled sign goes up, you know. Okay, well, let's say here in the capital, if you're at Heathrow and you're going to Amsterdam, if British Airways cancel, then KLM will take you there. If not, then I'll have a look at EasyJet and what's flying from London City. So,
have you any evidence? I mean, my theory now is if I book a holiday, I really don't want to be rebooking myself, hanging on an answer line that no one's answering or whatever. I want to do this through a travel agent.
Yeah.
Which we're in a bit of a decline pre-pandemic. Is there any evidence to suggest people now trust a travel agent more than doing things themselves?
Absolutely, Eamonn, and that's because during COVID, well, we've talked about this many times, the huge problems were generally with people who'd done their own bookings and arranged car rental and accommodation, and typically the flight would be cancelled. The car rental company or the hotel would say, "Look, Signor, it's here for you. The fact that you're not isn't our problem," and you'd end up paying for it. Or they booked through online travel agents, usually based abroad, and that had all gone wrong. Human travel agents are absolutely great. They should be on your side. Furthermore, if I were looking at well, I mean, I actually produced for the MPs yesterday a kind of league table of who's doing really well in terms of flying the programme they operate. And at the top, joint first, Ryanair and Jet2, Wizz Air in third place, and then...
what, they get away on time, they get away...
Yeah, they're just
the
fly. Yeah, I had a 90-minute delay with Ryanair the other day, but 90-minute delay...
We'll almost would count yourselves lucky to be getting
exactly.
that.
Well, we live in. Incidentally, just briefly, and out of time, but you did mention car hire.
Yeah.
And that's actually changed hugely since post-pandemic.
Yep, car hire used to be fantastically competitive, great value, really
Very
good.
pricey now.
Well, exactly, and that's because all the car rental companies sold off their fleets. Of course, you wouldn't want to have 50,000 cars sitting around. they've been slow to get them, partly because there've been problems with the manufacturing, of course, and semiconductors and so on, partly also because they are quite happy to see the cost of a week's car rental on a Spanish island go up to £1,000, because it means they're making back some of the losses they made during COVID.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Thank you.
Out there.
Joy.
Holiday joy.
Sit in the back garden, really.
Yeah.
So, thanks very much indeed. Coming up to 8:25, please do stay with us. We're going to be talking about the government's first cash instalment for households that are on low incomes, and we're doing that right after the weather.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things are hotting up day on day. A warmer day today compared to yesterday. Just a cautionary note, UV levels and grass pollen levels will once again be high, and it's not hot and sunny everywhere. These weather fronts just again pushing into the far northwest, so at times today the highlands of Scotland, the northern and the Western Isles will see some outbreaks of rain. There's a small chance of a shower over Northern Ireland too, but generally it's dry and sunny and a bit warmer than yesterday. Temperatures ticking up. Some cloud will develop as we go through the day, but still, as I say, most of us just seeing more of that strong sunshine, and it will lift those temperatures higher than yesterday's into the mid-20s, even the high 20s across the southeast. A warmer day for eastern and southern Scotland as well, and Northern Ireland, but it will still be quite cool with that rain across the far northwest. A bit breezy here as well. We'll continue to see some of that patchy rain across the Highlands and the Northern Isles through this evening and overnight. A small chance of a shower this evening for Northern Ireland, but for most, a very pleasant, balmy summer's evening and a pretty warm night. Temperatures holding up in double figures in most places. The nights are going to get warmer still, as are the days. Come tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures, again, mid to high 20s across the southeast. Again, for most it is a sunny day, but yet again, Western Scotland, the Northern Isles of Scotland, likely to see a bit of cloud. And also tomorrow, maybe a bit more cloud and some patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland, maybe later on into southwest Scotland. So again, a little cooler here, but for most other places, temperatures a degree or so higher tomorrow, 29 across the southeast. The coasts will always be a little cooler. Temperatures likely to peak on Friday. This area of high pressure is edging away, allowing hot air to drift up from the south. This cold front will introduce cooler air further north, but in the south we could peak on Friday with temperatures at 34 Celsius. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
just want to flag up some things still to come on the programme today, from your bowl of breakfast cereal to a slice of toast. The thing is, the truth is, you have no idea how many calories that you're eating.
Well, chances are, even if you do know how many calories are in a normal portion, you've probably, according to this latest report, just done a bigger portion than you realise. So we're getting more calories through the...
When you see when you use that word normal portion, normal, I mean...
I know, it's like a fist is what you're supposed to, yeah.
In a bowl.
If I can see the edge of the plate, I'm upset.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have it piled up, you know, I mean...
Food mountain.
I mean, if I'm taking cornflakes, I mean, it's half a packet in my plate.
I hope you've made note of that. You're providing me with a cooked breakfast later, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Towering.
Yes, well, yes,
no, we're talking about obesity. We shouldn't really be talking like this. We should be doing portion control, and we should be very healthy. We're going to be speaking to the nutrition about why this is really important, especially when it comes to kids. That's at 6:45.
Okay, also coming up, as the cost of living crisis continues, we're going to be discovering how it's impacted rescue services, because charities like Air Ambulance, that's something which are charities, you just haven't got the money to give to them anymore. We're going to be live from a helicopter base in County Durham, 7:15 this morning.
And I would say please send in your emails, but you don't need an appeal. Our inbox has gone on fire. The subject of this ECHR intervention on the Rwanda plane.
European Court of Human Rights. Don't use initials. People don't understand.
Okay, the European Court's getting involved in
no
our...
idea. They think you're dotty. Oh, sorry.
And Scottish independence. I mean, the inbox. We've got someone behind the scenes trying to get it together. There's too many for me to just weed my way through them. There's a lot of them. Yeah, the whole team. Anyway, so you don't need to get in touch. We've already got so many coming in. It's great.
Okay, this may affect you or it may not. Two sets of payments coming from the government. This is to help low-income households dealing with the cost of living. The first one's going to come on the 14th of July, and that will be £350. The second one comes in the autumn, and it is £650. Let's talk to who have we got on this?
Laura Retty.
Laura, yes, Laura, yeah. Laura, we go to you and explain this one to us, and how welcome. Why the small payment in the summer and the big payment in the autumn, for instance? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Yeah, so you haven't got that quite right. So it's a one-off payment of £650. So the first one will be paid on July the 14th, and that will be £326. And the second portion of that will be £324 in the autumn. So it's £650 total. We don't know the exact month in autumn yet. The government is still yet to announce that. So this will affect 8 million of those on the lowest incomes that are eligible for this payment. This means those already on a range of benefits are eligible for the grant. So this includes income-based job seekers allowance, income-related employment and support allowance, income support, working tax credit, child tax credit, universal credit, pension credit. If you claim any of those benefits, you'll be getting this payment automatically. You don't need to apply for it. It will come to you automatically. Now, in addition to this, there are separate one-off payments of £300 to pensioner households and also £150 to individuals receiving disability benefits, simply because those are the groups who are most vulnerable to the rising prices. Now, what I will say is claimants will need to be in receipt of these benefits or have claimed or have started a claim by Wednesday, May the 25th. What I will say, this is on top of the £150 last month that a lot of households received for their council tax, and also the £400 that every household in the country will be getting as an energy rebate in October.
It's all part of the announcement that was made last month by Rishi Sunak, this emergency package. I mean, obviously you've referenced the previous announcement at the end, but this is this latest tranche, the £226 that will be arriving in people's bank accounts from next month. That's his latest announcement.
Yes, so the announcement today is basically the date that first instalment of £326 is coming. So it's on July the 14th. So that's their first payment, and then the second payment of £324 will be coming in the autumn. So that's what they're announcing today, is simply when that's coming, because although this was announced last month, nobody knew when this would actually be hitting their bank accounts. So this just means all of those people who make those benefit claims now know when it's coming.
Just ask you this: would you be in favour, as a personal finance person, as Isabel said, there are two tranches, so bigger sums. Do you think it'd be better paying that out in smaller sums more regularly, or what's your view on, getting the larger lump sum?
Personally, I think it would probably be beneficial for families to receive these, rather than two big lumps like this, to have a monthly payment. A lot of people really struggle to budget their money, and this payment, essentially it could land in your account and you could pay anything with it. You're not forced to use it towards your energy, you're not forced to use it towards your food. People need this money, so I'm sure that is what they're going to pay it or use it for. But I don't know whether two big lump sums like this is particularly helpful, especially because in schools these days we still are not teaching people how to budget their money and how to, understand their personal finances. So I think that what would be better is to have more monthly payments. However, I should imagine there just simply isn't the infrastructure to be able to do that at this stage.
We were taught that at school, Laura. Thanks very much indeed. Laura Retty there.
Still haven't cracked that, have we?
Still haven't cracked. I do this, Laura, I do this thing with my kids where I say, everything's going up by 10%. You're going to have to cut back by 10% or save by 10%. Now, this comes from me.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, but anyway. That's the advice. Bye, Laura. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
With the time at 6:34, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We've got David Mellor and Claire Muldoon taking us through the papers in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
With the time at 6:37, let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
First deportation flight due to take asylum seekers to Rwanda was cancelled just minutes before takeoff. It's after last-minute interventions by the European Court of Human Rights. Up to 7 migrants were expected to have been on board the flight. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has expressed her disappointment but said the government is undeterred. Preparation for the next flight will now begin.
Going to talk about that with our newspaper reviewers next. The Department of Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment on the 14th of July. It's a £326 instalment and it will be paid into bank accounts of low-income households on benefits. A second portion of a total payment of £650 will follow in the autumn.
The Prime Minister is to face MPs at Prime Minister's questions later, the first time since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the powers to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes as not a big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
And it's expected to be the hottest day of the year so far today, 28 degrees Celsius. The Met Office and the UK Health Security Agency have issued a level 2 heat health alert for large parts of southern and central England. Temperatures there are expected to reach 34 degrees as the week goes on.
You only have to brace yourself because everywhere you look, men have taken their shirts off because they can't handle the heat. It's a universally British thing.
Or taps off.
Get the tats out, get the shirt off. As soon as the sun comes out.
Is that offensive?
Unless they're in really good nick and it's by a swimming pool.
Are you objectifying men, Isabel? Are you?
I'm just saying, you quite often see people who should perhaps be a bit more modest.
Absolutely, I agree with
everywhere,
you.
walking down the street. Doesn't happen in Italy, is all I'm saying.
Does it not?
I don't think so. They're so chic and
together.
Okay. You're hearing from Claire Muldoon there, and also we've got David Miller, who's always got his shirt off. Any opportunity?
No.
Any opportunity?
I would not wish to offend the public. And until I get rid of my lockdown gut, I'm
David.
staying
Very
covered
well tailored.
up.
Well tailored.
I worry more about moobs than my gut. I do think.
No, I haven't got moves.
Have you not?
I don't mind baring my boobs, so you could see I haven't got moves.
This is taking a
But
turn.
further down,
Sorry,
You started it.
problematic.
You started it.
Look, what we've got to do, they started but they didn't finish it, the Rwanda flight, and you've both got views on this. David, we go to you first of all, your take front page.
Lawyers, hey?
Well,
lawyers, you know, I don't approve of lawyers, you know, like the rhinoceros, thick-skinned, short-sighted, always ready to charge, you know, but basically... What we've got here, and the Times, European judges block deportations to Rwanda, Telegraph, European judges halt migrant flight to Rwanda. We have 3 courts in this country, each one of whom, to my astonishment, agreed with this. Now, the European Court of Human Rights has blocked it. Now, I spent quite a lot of time when I was in government studying the European Court of Human Rights, and I was passionately against it right from the start. I even visited it, where they wandered in with their robes on, looking like the town council of Clochemerle. Who remembers Clochemerle these days? Anyway, what I don't understand is why this was obeyed. I am insistent that they didn't have to obey this, because the European Court of Human Rights, that what they say does not have direct application in law in this country.
My understanding, and I may have got this wrong, is that it triggered another wave of last-minute interventions. I don't know if that's correct, but I think it was the sort of straw that broke the camel's back. But it's so fascinating that you think we should have just ignored the ECHR. And certainly our inbox is just, how can we, in post-Brexit Britain, still be beholden to
Well, that's
to
the
rules
point.
from
And although it's not an EU thing, it's a Council of Europe thing, no, I was virulently opposed to it, because in the old days, and I suppose there's still some of them left, the ECHR consisted of a lot of civil servants from communist regimes who then suddenly sat in judgment over the human rights in this country. And I have to tell you, it's a terrible thing. It was never intended to deal with countries like us. What it was intended to do was to ensure that other countries didn't slip back into some kind of Nazism, you know, fanaticism. It was never, but it's really a classic clever idea that, like a boomerang, comes back and hits you in the mush.
And it does, by acknowledging it, it gives Europe a lot of power, morally and intellectually, I suppose, as well. And we talk about the protocol amendments that have been going on this week. Surely that emboldens Europe to challenge those.
Of course, and that's why either they admit that they decided to show respect. Always a bad idea, showing respect. But they decided they would show respect for the ECHR, though they don't really feel any. Or that they should say, we didn't have to do this, because otherwise I think we're in, what's the point of having a Supreme Court? When here's
it's
a
not
question
supreme.
for you. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
He got it.
Okay.
When is the Supreme Court not supreme? It's a joke.
Yeah.
Claire, you go to the Guardian take on this one.
Well, yeah, and there's this breed now of this alternative opposition. Alternative opposition being extra actors, really, in the legitimacy of all of this. And it's the Prince of Wales, it's the Archbishop of Canterbury, and celebrities. So not only do we have the three courts in this country that said, yeah, it can go ahead, and then being vetoed by the legitimacy of the Europe post-Brexit Britain, we've now got the Prince of Wales, who came out and said it was appalling over the weekend. And this has been told. I mean, everyone is over this rhetoric. And it was a soundbite on from Clarence House that was admitted and fortified. But the thing that gets me is the Prince of Wales is going out to Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, next week as a Commonwealth head. So I think it's very political. It's obviously politicised, and everyone is just jumping on a bandwagon here. And I think if the French were actually doing their job, we wouldn't actually be in this position, because we are paying France money to keep the border safe at Calais. Yes, you agree, no?
Funnily enough, do you think this will
they did, and they've just pocketed the money and
done nothing about
maybe
it.
bought a few new boats to send them over here. Yeah.
So now we've got this rise of this woke left elite who are saying, it's disastrous, it's catastrophic, it's against all human notion of human rights, and we keep hearing human rights.
I know you're a big churchgoer.
Yeah.
But do you not look towards something like the state religion, the Church of England, to give some sort of moral guidance on this?
There you go, Claire. Your conscience has been pricked.
Well, you need to watch your lexical choice here, girl. I just think that, look, the world is for everybody, right? We don't have ownership on countries or anything else. But when we're trying to govern and I would go further and say it's actually people's safety we're trying to help here. Exactly. It's not about human rights, it's about human safety. And we've got the business model of human trafficking. That, to me, is more abhorrent than sending people, particularly, it's saying now, to a place of safety, Kigali in Rwanda, where it's more safe than crossing the channel.
But can I just chip in one thing, because I've been getting more and more angry. I've had to shove my blood pressure pills down my throat. I mean, I'm eating them like sweets.
I think the inbox implies half the nation shares your view.
I'm eating them like sweets. Because, you see, the thing is, this whole business about asylum law, the idea is someone is under threat in a country, so they flee to another country, and that country is supposed to then look after them. What they're not supposed to do, and there's no legitimacy to it, is you leave a country where maybe, because there's a lot of lies told about this, maybe you're under threat. Then you travel through a number of perfectly safe countries in order to arrive at the country that you want to be at in the first place.
At risk of sending your blood pressure through the roof even further. But if we were to say, right, the first country is the only place that these migrants are allowed to go, places like Greece or perhaps Spain,
Hungary,
whether it's south of France, they'd be completely overwhelmed. Is it not civilised to share that out? Especially if countries, if these migrants have links with these countries, they speak the language, they perhaps...
I mean, the Greeks suffer enough from British tourism, don't they? But
that's just the alternate argument.
But I also think, so let me have another go.
Go on then.
Okay. Hopping into a boat and coming across to Britain is a way of queue jumping, because we need labour. We need people to come to this country. It's terrible to see the shortage of skills that there are around. But should people be allowed to get up the queue simply by turning up? This is where we come to it. Mm-hmm. I'm a lawyer, a proven lawyer, as Peter Cook once said, a proven lawyer. But I tell you what, I think it's outrageous that lawyers are taking taxpayers' money to keep these people in this country. Because one thing, but then again, Priti Patel should have sorted this out. If people arrive uninvited in that way, they shouldn't have access to the British legal system.
But these are highly motivated people, aren't they? That people who want to work, want to earn.
Yes, but David's making a point there. This is a money-making industry. There are a lot of advisors attached to this, which he's touching upon, whether they're lawyers or whether they're... I don't know, goodness me, how big the circle is. But there's a lot of people making cash out of this.
There's a lot of people making cash out of this, and the lawyers predominantly are the ones that are doing it. But the lawyers would say they are doing their job because they have they are guided under the rule of law.
But
They
you see,
are
I think
guided
that's
to do
what
this.
concentration camp guards used to say. We're doing our job. But I think, as far as lawyers are concerned,
Well, the lawyers don't have the power to do it.
I just think that there are plenty of lawyers who not only have some knowledge of the law, but who also are politically motivated. And I think there's a lot of that about.
David raised the point, and I raised this earlier with a lawyer, which is, why didn't we simply just ignore what the European Court of Human Rights said on all of this? Your views on that, do let us know. What's wrong with you?
Coming out there.
What are you pickpocketing me
see
for?
something poking out your
I'll tell you
pocket.
what that was. That was my brief yesterday when I was
With your charity work. You didn't change your jacket.
taken in by the Surrey police yesterday, police force taken in. And do you know what? I went to see them, and they were dealing with child protection.
Oh, amazing.
Absolutely amazing work
heroes.
that they do there, and stuff that you don't hear about. But that was my little map as to how to get there.
Is that on Mount Brown?
On what? On Mount
Brown.
What do you mean?
We're like an old
I
married
think the
couple.
secret life of Eamonn should remain secret, don't you?
Yes.
For public decency. to be
Yeah.
preserved.
Guys, let's talk about this. The Daily Mail. Prince Andrew crushed and confused by his so-called snubbing this week. I mean, would the message not now have got through to Prince Andrew that he's history?
But he isn't that kind of man.
His
He's
ego
a
would...
grotesquely insensitive, rather stupid individual. And, you know, if anybody ever gets fed up with Prince Charles, get on your knees and thank God that we're not going to have King Andrew. And the reason we don't have King Andrew is because of Prince Charles. So I think, I won't go through all my favourite stories about Prince Andrew, but I want to say, 5 months ago, he was forced to hand in all his royal titles. Now he wants them back. And it shows a grotesque... here's a man who paid £12 million, but not to this woman, but not admitting anything. I wish someone would pay £12 million to me and not admit anything. You know, I'd be quite happy for them not to admit doing terrible things for me. I'd go run off with the £12 million. But also, it gives one an opportunity. I'm not a big fan of this fellow Omid Scobie, who seems to live in the back pocket of Meghan Markle. But he's quoted in this story as saying this: every chance Prince Andrew is given to try and rehabilitate his image is a step closer to further damage and shame for the institution of the monarchy. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Well done, Omid. I knew I was going to find something I agreed with you about, and thank you for providing it. But he's right, isn't he? I mean, he's right.
Well, meanwhile, Prince Andrew's former wife has insisted that her ex-husband is a good and kind man, and she would still marry him if she could go back in time. So, there you are.
I can't understand why Sarah Ferguson is still getting column inches, to be honest with you. I mean, I really can't. What right does she have to give? I mean, why are people still giving her a voice in oh gosh, the world's gone now.
We'll give you
a chance to have a lie down now between this and the next item. You're in despair. And
I am.
Claire and David will be back in about 40 minutes' time.
Enjoying that. I felt like was so much we could have done that.
We've got so much more to go. We're going to refuse to leave.
Yeah, we're going to get the ECHR involved.
Yes.
You can stay on the run.
Yes.
David, you were going on strike before we went on here.
I want an injunction to prevent me being removed.
Instead, what we'll do is we'll bring you the latest news update, and here it comes. The Prime Minister will face MPs for the first time today since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes as no big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
The Department for Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment on the 14th of July. A £326 instalment will be paid into the bank accounts of low-income households on benefits, and the second portion of the £650 payment will follow in the autumn.
Pharmacists will be able to spot potential cancer cases as part of a new NHS trial. It's hoped that giving pharmacists more power to send patients for cancer scans and tests will help improve the speed of diagnosis for many people. Hundreds of those people will take part in the pilot scheme in England, and chemists will be invited to apply to be involved in this soon if they wish to be. Okay, we're talking about obesity levels now, soaring obesity levels. This is amongst children, and it's led to a concerning climb in the number of diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
And new numbers show that nearly half of us know how many calories are in everyday food, but the truth is we're actually often getting it completely wrong.
More than half of us know.
Think we know.
Our lack of awareness could be affecting children. So let's speak to
Worst
nutritionist Amanda Hamilton on all of this one. Amanda, lovely to see you again. Tell me, is it something then, if it is so important, if calorie counting, calorie content is so important, is that not something that children should basically be taught at school?
I mean, it's a good question as ever, Eamonn, but the reality is it's not for children to have to figure this out. It should be further up the chain. It should be much easier. And the reality is, I still check calories. You know, I have to use an app to check on different calories sometimes. It is confusing. And the key point of this research is that we massively underestimate the calorie content of everyday foods and meals. So even if someone was wanting to try to do the right thing within their family, they often can be, just getting it wrong. And of course, the obesity stats, as you say, are shocking again, especially when it focuses on children. So yet another wake-up call on this story.
Yeah, you talk about we get it wrong, but we get portion size and portion control completely wrong because nobody really teaches you what size a portion is. I mean, you just fill your plate, or when you're cooking at home, you cook as much as you like, or whatever it happens to be. I mean, recently I was looking at what a bowl of cereal should look like in the morning. Believe me, it does not look like my bowl of cereal, but very, very small when it comes to counting salt content, sugar content, calorie content. I mean, it's something the size of your fist, really, that you should be eating, where I'm more likely to be eating, much bigger than that.
So actually, Eamonn, you've just hit the nail on the head as to where you are going wrong, where you and many other people are going wrong. So if you had, for example, traded whatever breakfast cereal it is you have with something that is naturally more satiating and filling for the equivalent calories, you would require a healthy portion of it. So nobody ever binges on porridge, do they? Not really, not full-on Scottish, Irish type porridge. It's very difficult to binge on lentil soup or go back for seconds or thirds of a mackerel or salmon. There are certain foods that we just don't overeat on. And if we stick to these real foods, generally speaking, the portions take care of themselves. Where the calorie confusion comes in is much more likely to be on the meals. I've got a couple of stats here there. Fish and chips, we estimate that to be 388 calories, but this research showed it's actually 1,000 calories, massively underestimating. And I could go on and on and on, actually. There's endless calorie confusing foods, meals, everyday foods. And it's not about not having these type of foods from time to time. Of course, everyone's diet can be how they want. But if we are underestimating the calorie impact, and of course, sadly, a lot of these types of foods that we're talking about are also deficient in nutrients, which is another issue, then it's easy to see why problems can manifest.
That you can fill yourself up with something healthy, because a lot of people just like that feeling of being full, especially in a cold winter's day. You want to sort of feel full. So you could have your smaller portion of fish and chips, but perhaps a big plate of salad or something, or some people who are really, I know.
Could I have the fish, chips, and a mushy piece and a big salad?
2 pints of water before you eat to make yourself feel
pints of water.
Full to the brim.
So what you
like
could
greasy
do,
chips.
What you could do a bit more realistically in that scenario would be have a big bowl of soup. That actually takes a while to leave your stomach, so you do get a bit of feeling of fullness. In terms of what the calories deliver, it's pretty low, but in terms of the feeling of fullness and of course the nutrition, it's great. So I think it's about trying to close the gap on this calorie confusion, make people more aware, so that we don't sleepwalk into some of these issues. And of course, I know you guys are parents. it is so, so important for everyone listening as well. We want to do the right thing for our kids. And the latest research does highlight the massive increase, actually, in obesity. It's in England, isn't it, in kids
Amanda,
quite young.
Well, thanks for raising that awareness, and I hope it sticks with all of us about actually what we are eating. Appreciate it. Got to say goodbye to you, Amanda. Thanks very much indeed.
Bye.
Bye. Do stay with us. Coming up, we'll be continuing to talk about that grounded Rwanda flight and what happens next. That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight carrying UK asylum seekers to Rwanda is cancelled minutes before takeoff.
A very good morning to you. Thank you for your company. Time's just gone 7 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 15th of June. Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. The first asylum flight to Rwanda was left grounded following a last-minute ruling from the European Court of Human Rights. Home Secretary Priti Patel said the government would not be deterred from doing what she said was the right thing, and goes on to promise to deliver the plans needed to control the nation's borders. She says she's preparing for the next flight.
What will the government do next with its controversial Rwanda policy? We'll be live outside the Home Office.
That's very shortly. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced what she terms a refreshed case for Scottish independence. She says the referendum will take place late next year with or without approval from Westminster.
8 million homes across the UK will receive their first cash instalment as part of the government's cost of living payment plan. £324 will be paid to low-income households on the 14th of July.
You can join any of these discussions, and I think Isabel will tell you how you are joining.
Yes.
Details on the screen there, but what have you got?
Well, huge number of views on Rwanda, on Scottish independence. Keith saying, I wonder if I can now challenge the government on paying the extortionate visa fees to have my wife live here in the UK. Janice says, I'm afraid our country's unable to move forward on anything anymore. And Graham says, I think most people will be absolutely shocked from the decision to halt the first plane last night to Rwanda. And whilst the European Courts of Human Rights continue to halt the process, I think the government and Priti Patel will succeed on this and have the backing of the majority, including myself. All views welcome. Keep them coming in.
More of those next. Right, we're looking at the headlines on all of this. Fury as Rwanda flight blocked, says the Daily Express, and that's repeated across many of the newspapers. Guardian saying European ruling throws Rwanda plan into chaos. Well, let's now talk to two people about this. We've got Antonia Torr, who's head of immigration services at her legal firm Howard Kennedy, and also we've got Conservative Minister Brendan Clark-Smith on this as well. So, but before all of that...
Well, let's go to our national reporter, actually, Paul Hawkins. He's outside the Home Office this morning for us. And Paul, look, the latest move coming from the European Court of Human Rights, the ball now in the court of the Home Office. What happens next?
Well, that's the key question, isn't it? And just to be clear about this, and we can't emphasise this enough, the European Court of Human Rights is nothing to do with the EU. Effectively, Britain's been a member of the Council of Europe. That was set up after the Second World War. They then put into place the European Convention on Human Rights. It was a kind of treaty that everyone signed up to. And then the European Court of Human Rights is there to enforce that convention. And that was where the ruling came from in Strasbourg last night. Very interesting about what the government's move is next. The Human Rights Act, that was brought in 1998. That effectively means that British laws are answerable to the European Convention on Human Rights. So before 1998, if you felt that your human rights were being infringed, you went to Strasbourg, you went to the European Court of Human Rights. After 1998, you could go to British courts and have it enforced there. So the government, it would seem to indicate, and Boris Johnson alluded to this tomorrow before that flight was grounded, that there would have to be a change in legislation to the Human Rights Act. And if we actually go and look back at the Conservative manifesto from a few years ago, this is in 2019, it said on page 48, there is a commitment to update the Human Rights Act. So it would mean legal interventions are not abused to conduct politics by another means or to create needless delay. So in the next few days, expect to hear some noises from the government on how it is going to loosen the Human Rights Act so it complies with the European Convention on Human Rights when it comes to this policy.
We leave Paul, we go to Boscombe Down now, where the aircraft was supposed to take off from last night. Our reporter Jeff Moody is there. So is the plane still there, Jeff?
No, the plane's gone. It was just behind me last night on the just almost taxiing to the runway. I mean, we watched as everybody got on board. We saw the catering trucks get on board. We then saw the asylum seekers themselves get on board. The lights were all on the runway. The engine was running. It was all set to go. And then right at the last minute, we heard that the remaining migrants had gone to the Court of Human Rights and the European Court of Human Rights and had been told that they could wait until the judicial review, which doesn't take place until next month. So suddenly the whole thing was off. Priti Patel, as we were hearing, is determined that it is going to continue, that it is going to work. She said that although it's very disappointing that the plane didn't take off yesterday, work now begins this morning on that next plane. And you can bet that they're going to be determined that the next plane will take off without a hitch. I mean, it is a major hitch. It's definitely a blow for the government that a foreign judge in a foreign land has ruled against British courts to make this decision and to go against government policy. So it's definitely a sting in the tail, but hopefully the next flight will be very shortly.
OK, Jeff, leave it there. Thanks for the update. Really appreciate it. So I want to bring in Antonia Torr on this one now. Antonia, as a lawyer, and you're against this flight, and so therefore you'd be for this European Court of Human Rights interjection here. Guardian says that their ruling throws the government's Rwanda plan into chaos. Would you agree with that?
I think it definitely causes the government to reassess and revisit their policy and their strategy. It's important to bear in mind that what the European Court has done has basically put a stay on the policy until the judicial review, which is in about a month's time. The UK courts were effectively saying, we're not going to comment on whether the policy is lawful or not. That is for the hearing in July. But in the interim, the Secretary of State can continue. And if it was ruled that the policy was unlawful, those who were removed to Rwanda could be returned back to the UK. what the European Court of Human Rights have basically done is short-circuited that a little bit to say, well, no, let's have that discussion first before we put people on a plane.
OK, well, let's bring in Brendan Clark-Smith, Conservative MP, who's also in the studio to this debate this morning. There will be lots of people listening to this, and irrespective of their views on this policy, will think, how can it be that something has been approved by the British courts, by Lord Justice Singh, no less, at the Supreme Court this week, and then at the 11th hour blocked by the ECHR when we're no longer in the European Union? People will say, who's running this country?
Absolutely, and it's about taking back control. And as we've said, it's been through 3 British courts already. It's been to the High Court, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, which doesn't seem to be very supreme at the moment, of course. But the government haven't lost the case here, as Antonio was saying. You know, this is a stay on this. The government could still be successful. We could still have it found in the government's favour. But it is very frustrating. It wastes a lot of money. It wastes a lot of time. And at the end of the day, you know, the government have put this, what I think is a watertight piece of legislation through there, and I'm confident they're still going to succeed in the end.
So why are we still in the ECHR?
Well, I think if you go back in time a little bit and you look at the convention that came in after the Second World War, there's a lot of very reasonable stuff there. So freedom of expression, right to a fair trial, and the kind of things that everyone really can agree with. But then since 1998, the Blair administration brought in the Human Rights Act, of course, and it actually put this into British law. Really, we feel it's been kind of gold-plated by this kind of left-leaning woke judges, so to speak. And really, this is what the problem is. It's not so much the principles, but it's gone off in a completely different direction. So we want to take back control.
Would you take Britain out of that agreement? I mean, if you were cabinet minister, would you be lobbying that we cut to the European Court of Human Rights adrift?
I think this is the debate that we need to have. I mean, certainly it needs updating, I think, at the very least. We said about British courts deciding it. It doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater and, you know, we're very proud of...
You can't pick and choose
this country.
which of their decisions that you like or you don't like.
We can't, but when we make our own laws, I think that's the point, is that we can actually stick to those as well.
Why didn't you just tell them to go swing? You know, just why did we listen to them last night? Why didn't the plane just take off?
Well, that has actually happened in some countries where they ignore the rulings and just get on with it. But I think we do it the right way in this country. We do actually go through the full legal processes, and I would rather that we did that than we just ignore the law.
Antonio, I'd love you to explain. I do explain to you, you're in favour of this intervention and you totally understand it and you get it. Now, here's one viewer, Patricia. I voted for Brexit. I was sick of the EU running the show. Here we are now. The tail is still wagging the dog. Why on earth are the European courts having a final say over our legal system, which Brendan alluded to there as well? How can we as a country possibly move forward if they keep getting in the way? So it is complicated. People thought they voted for one thing with Brexit. They thought, well, goodbye to all that European interference. Not necessarily so.
The European Court of Human Rights is very separate from the European Union. It's a separate legal agreement that we've signed up to. The Conservative government, as one of your reporters already mentioned, had it in their manifesto to update the Human Rights Act so that perhaps those references and interventions wouldn't happen. They failed to do that, so it's really the government's own fault that they find them in this position.
Let's talk about this judicial review that's due to take place in July, because all of this may happen and, you know, a handful of illegal immigrants may find themselves in Kigali in the next few weeks. It's probable, it's possible. Mm-hmm. The judicial review, how long is that likely to take? And, you know, obviously you haven't got an impartial position, but do you suspect that this policy may be thrown out?
So with the judicial review, the important thing to bear in mind is that the review is looking at the policy as a whole. So all in all, it's quite a generic assessment. You know, do we agree with the policy? Do we think the Secretary of State has got the right procedures in place for this policy to meet her legal obligations? That's quite a high threshold to assess, which is why the earlier attempts have been unsuccessful in the High Court and the Court of Appeal. But the individual circumstances, when looked at on an individual basis, they have been successful because you're not talking about it in generic terms. So I wouldn't be surprised if this policy was found to be lawful following some amendments or restrictions by the judges in the judicial review, because that's the nature of what that court case would look at.
Brendan Clark-Smith, I do think there's a really interesting element to this whole scenario that we find ourselves in when there's this unelected voice interfering in this. I mean, at the end of the day, the government have been elected on a mandate of trying to control immigration. You've got interventions from bishops who aren't elected. You've got interventions from Prince of Wales, who's unelected. You've got interventions from the European Court of Human Rights, who are unelected. People will say, is this a democratic country?
Absolutely, and it's about accountability. And this is why I think a lot of people at home will be very frustrated that, of course, the plane didn't take off. I think there was an argument over how many people were going to be on the plane, and for me it was very important that at least 1 or 2 people were, because it's the principle. It shows you've got over the line, and you can talk about maybe having more people on the plane later. The fact that nobody's actually got on it in the end shows that there are still some battles I think we need to win.
Well, interesting, very interesting, Brendan. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan Clark-Smith is a Conservative minister and MP, and here we have Antonia Torr, who is Head of Immigration Services at Howard Kennedy. Thanks for your perspective, both of you. Thank you for your take on all of that one. At 13 minutes past the hour, good morning to you. You're listening and watching Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this morning. The Prime Minister is to face MPs at Prime Minister's Questions for the first time since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes as not a big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
The Department for Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment on the 14th of July. That first part is £326. It will be paid into the bank accounts of low-income households on benefits. Then there will be a second portion. Payment will follow in the autumn.
Pharmacists will be able to spot potential cancer cases as part of a new NHS trial. It's hoped that giving pharmacists more power to send patients for cancer scans and tests will help to improve the speed of diagnosis for many. Hundreds in England will take part in the pilot scheme, and pharmacists will be invited to apply to be involved soon.
So, anything you want to...
Well, I was just, so many views coming in. I thought it'd be a good chance to reflect some of those in relation to what we've just been discussing. Somebody called Hoddle, I don't know if I've got that correct, saying the EU's caused the Rwanda issue by allowing mass uncontrolled immigration and not securing its channel borders. The ECHR's last-minute intervention shows we still have no right to self-determination, whatever happened to Brexit and the promised British Bill of Rights. The EU is using every underhand trick in the book to humiliate the UK. We should point out, as Antonia was saying a moment ago, the ECHR isn't, and it is separate from the European Union. It's actually part of the Council of Europe. However, a lot of people would say that, it's not...
It's got that E word.
It's got the E word, the dirty
European
E word.
is in there.
Alan says, why is it that Britain cannot remove these people when entered illegally, but France are not being done for this, letting them across the channel? What are
That's
the
not being done. Is not a term a girl like you would use, but you mean bang
not
the
being
rights.
done
You know what
for
I
this.
mean?
Got it.
Brought to book.
Yeah,
or whatever
okay.
it is. I mean, you wouldn't be saying that being done.
I probably wouldn't, but
Not a
I
girl in that
understand.
spotty
I
dress.
understand the point.
Are you getting the 101 Dalmatians?
I'm getting a few emails, but I'm skipping over those about the dotty dress.
I'm sure it's very nice. It's not. Look, listen. You think people think it's ludicrous. Not all of them do. No, some people are looking and thinking, how lovely, how...
It's a summer's day. It's the hottest day of the year.
Correct.
And I just thought, why not?
Yeah.
We're going to Ascot later. I'm not wearing this, but I just thought I'd get in the mood early on.
What, like a Cruella de Vil?
Exactly. I'm channeling my inner no-nonsense mood.
Hold on to your puppies then, that's all I'd say. We've talked at length how the cost of living crisis is affecting families, right? But what about rescue services, right? There's this big impact on charities in general, and the Great North Air Ambulance is a charity itself.
Yeah, it's providing life-saving care to people, particularly in North East and North Yorkshire and Cumbria. That's where we're focusing anyway. And the teams there say that their donations have been drying up. With bills going up, few have extra cash to give to the charity.
Well, let's go to our reporter, Rachel Sweeney. Rachel is at the headquarters of the Air Ambulance. Who have you got with you there? What are you going to be talking about, and how crucial is this service in that area, Rachel?
Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Yes, the Great North Air Ambulance Service is in its 20th year this year, and in that time, the crews have responded to more than 23,500 incidents. Joining me now is CEO David Stockton and critical care paramedic Jamie Walsh. David, we'll start with you. In order to keep this service going, you need to raise £6.7 million a year. I mean, that's a great deal of money without being in a cost of living crisis.
Absolutely. It's a staggering amount of money. What I can reassure everybody is that money is put to great use. So we have lots of ways of raising that money, and the public have always been very generous in our 20 years of supporting us to do that. So whether that be mass participation events, or whether it's supporting us through our recycling programmes of clothing, or legacies is one of our biggest forms of income. They generally come out and help us to do that every time.
What does that money go towards? Because your fuel costs for the helicopter that is behind me, that must have gone skyrocketed as well.
Yeah, so we face the same challenges every other business that's out there. So our gas, our electricity, our normal utility bills have all gone up. Our normal fleet diesel has gone up almost 180%. I think it is. It wasn't that long ago we were commenting on £1 a litre for diesel. It's now obviously touching towards £2, isn't it, for our normal fuel? And so our fleet is very expensive. The helicopter you'll see behind us, incredibly expensive to maintain and run. We use about 25,000 litres of fuel in that every month. So that again has gone up about 3 times multiple to where it was. So hugely expensive. So everything that you see, whether it be a bandage, a drug, an intervention, Jamie that you've got stood next to us here, or our doctors, everything needs paid for, and we face the same challenge as every other business.
But what happens if you don't raise £6.7 million?
I mean, without being dramatic, we won't be here. We've been very fortunate over the last 20 years that the public has seen the need. They've supported our cause greatly to put that full medical kit, whether it be the helicopter, the emergency department effectively out to the scene. They've supported us very well to do that. So we do have some reserves which sourced through the pandemic. That, along with some very generous giving and some participation in our events. Things like of the Great North Run, for instance, that's a huge money earner for us, getting people to go out there and to raise funds for us. Mm-hmm. So people have done that all the time, but without being dramatic, we couldn't be here without the public support, so we're eternally grateful for that.
Couldn't be here. Jamie, can you just very quickly explain how crucial your role is? What happens when you get to a scene?
Yeah, I mean, we cover from the Scottish borders to the Yorkshire borders, not east coast to west coast, so we cover 8,000 square miles of the UK to provide that, like David said, the emergency department to the scene. So that's anaesthesia and surgical skills and critical care skills to those patients who at that time are probably the most critically unwell patients in the country. And we have that opportunity to sort of make that situation a lot better. And it's a very privileged position to have, you know, the people of the north of England, the northeast and northwestern Cumbria, to, you know, help us deliver this kind of care to those patients who are most in need. But we are that resource for that region. You know, this kind of critical care can't be delivered by anyone else in this region, so it is imperative that we continue to get that support to raise that money to provide this service.
Jamie Walsh and David Stockton, thank you so much. A deeper look at the cost of living crisis and how it affects charities and rescue services that are so crucial to the north of England.
Well, Rachel, thank you for highlighting that. And it's obviously just not a problem in the north of England, everywhere, because these air ambulances are charities. Thank you very much indeed. As I was lying, what's the word? Flat on my back. That's the word. What's that word again?
Prostate.
See, I thought that was something in your bottom.
Well, there's two meanings to the word.
Has it?
Yeah,
right, yeah. Okay. So, anyway, as I was lying prostate in hospital, I could just hear the helicopters. And in days of old in Belfast, that would have been army helicopters in and out of bases. But this was the air ambulance, and the air ambulance in huge demand, great demand. And when you think of what those guys do, getting someone to attention as quickly as possible, it is incredible. It just amazes me, like hospices, these things end up being charities, you know.
But, you know, I actually was reading your column yesterday about your stay in hospital and about how you really wanted to pay tribute to all the people who were doing their job, nurses, doctors, whether it was the hospital porters, and you said none of them there doing it for money. It was a vocation, and you were just blown away by them.
Not only that, they loved the job. They loved coming in, and they had to do some pretty horrible things and deal with horrible things. But I mean, absolutely yes. When the National Health Service comes together, I mean, we do read this about the National Health Service is too bureaucratic, and this doesn't work and that doesn't work within it. But I had care for a week in there, and it was superb how it all came together. So you're
we're
absolutely
glad
right.
to see
As
you
with the
put
police
back
force
together.
yesterday, they call police services now, aren't they? I mean, dealing with child, what was the
Protection.
word? Protection. That's exactly what it was. And I mean, the things those officers had to look with and deal with and investigate. And really, they have to deal with a lot of vermin and scum out there that we don't want to face. We want the police to do our dirty work. We don't want to know too much about it. And when you look at staffing levels, how many officers are available to cover a whole county and whatever, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely...
Well, I have to say I agree with you. Someone who doesn't agree with you, Christopher Terry, says Isabel doesn't look like Cruella de Vil in her dress.
What does it look like?
Says I look like a domino.
What, you look like a pizza?
No, like a domino.
Oh,
What domino is
right.
that?
And I thought...
I'm putting this dress in the bin. Anyway.
Well,
If you're listening on the radio, I'm wearing a white dress with black dots. It's not.
No.
Quote
She's
Eamonn,
wearing
it's not the sort
black
of dress you'd
dots
normally
with a
wear to
white
read
dress.
news.
That's what she's doing. The dots are massive.
Well-
What's that game? What's that game you do and you put your...
Twister.
Twister. It's like a big twister mat that she's got here. But
What can you do?
Isabel, I always think of you. You could wear a tea towel and it would look marvellous.
It really would.
That is the difference.
That's very kind.
That is...
But, you know...
Yes, I do lie as well.
No, exactly. You've been known to.
We
Right.
got the sport and we
Gotta
got Paul Coit right after this. England, what happened last night after this?
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things are hotting up day on day. A warmer day today compared to yesterday. Just a cautionary note, UV levels and grass pollen levels will once again be high. And it's not hot and sunny everywhere. These weather fronts just again pushing into the far northwest. So at times today, the highlands of Scotland, the northern and the Western Isles will see some outbreaks of rain. There's a small chance of a shower over Northern Ireland too, but generally it's dry and sunny and a bit warmer than yesterday. Temperatures ticking up. Some cloud will develop as we go through the day, but still, as I say, most of us just seeing more of that strong sunshine. And it will lift those temperatures higher than yesterday's into the mid-20s, even the high 20s across the southeast. A warmer day for eastern and southern Scotland as well, and Northern Ireland. But it will still be quite cool with that rain across the far northwest, a bit breezy here as well. We'll continue to see some of that patchy rain across the Highlands and the Northern Isles through this evening and overnight. A small chance of a shower this evening for Northern Ireland, but for most, a very pleasant, balmy summer's evening and a pretty warm night. Temperatures holding up in double figures in most places. The nights are going to get warmer still, as are the days. Come tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures, again, mid to high 20s across the southeast. Again, for most it is a sunny day, but yet again, Western Scotland, the Northern Isles of Scotland, likely to see a bit of cloud. And also tomorrow, maybe a bit more cloud and some patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland, maybe later on into southwest Scotland. So again, a little cooler here, but for most other places, temperatures a degree or so higher tomorrow, 29 across the southeast. The coasts will always be a little cooler. Temperatures likely to peak on Friday. This area of high pressure is edging away, allowing hot air to drift up from the south. This cold front will introduce cooler air further north, but in the south we could peak on Friday with temperatures at 34 Celsius. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back at 7:28. Still to come on today's programme, the benefits of shed building. We'll be hearing from one member of the UK Men's Sheds Association. God, so sexist, isn't it? It says the organisation saved his mental and physical health. Now I feel guilty after a prostate cancer diagnosis. Feel even worse. That's before 8 o'clock. Sorry.
I like the idea of a shed, but I wouldn't want to build one.
No,
but I understand
get
for
someone to do.
Yes, get someone to do that for me, and then I go and live
hang
in
out in it.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
You and Maggie.
Okay, that dog loves me.
I know.
I do. Just want to say that to you. I don't want you. I know you're coming to my house today, but I worry that the dog
might yap at me.
might mate with you or something. Because you look,
I look like
a Dalmatian. That's what I'm worried about. Anyway, we've got the sport now. We go to Paul Coyte.
I wonder where the other 100 have gone. You know, I was looking over there.
Now, listen, we've got a situation on the back pages today. The newspapers have either chosen to go with the disaster of the Nations League and England losing to Hungary 4-0.
Yep.
Or more of them have gone to the England-New Zealand test match and Johnny Bairstow.
I'm only here to talk about the sheds. Yeah. I wasn't going to do either. Listen, what we can do is the way we can look at it is one was great and one was terrible.
Yes. What is the Nations League, anyway?
I know. The thing is, it doesn't matter about the Nations League. It's not really that important. What is important, though, is the fact that England got absolutely tonked yesterday. And to lose 4-0 at home, it's the worst result England have had at home in over 100 years.
Twice now by Hungary.
Oh, yeah, and that was the 6-3, which was way back in the 50s. That was the Puskás game. But the other one, which was just the other day, of course, we were referring to, it's just disastrous. And the thing is, whereas there was so much good feeling around Gareth Southgate, and the thing is, he's very good with the press, he's very good with people, he speaks very well.
People are puzzled that his bubble is burst.
That's the thing, the bubble is burst. I'm looking at it and thinking maybe players went in and he was very good with the players and it was pretty much a matter of, we're really enjoying this. It feels good again. Everybody's getting on. There's no cliques. All that's been dealt with. Whereas now that's run out. The tactics aren't really working. We've got a lot of very good players, young, talented players that don't seem to be getting a look in. We look at Foden, who isn't playing enough, Jack Grealish. It worries me when I hear Gareth Southgate saying Jack Grealish, the thing is he doesn't defend enough. And that reminds me of the days of Hoddle under Greenwood and these great talented players. It's not their job. I'm not a greater football mind than Gareth Southgate, but along with every other fan, I'm looking at it and thinking, this ain't working and this is a real worry because we've got the World Cup coming up in November.
Right. Well, from a real worry to a real celebration in the England cricket team against New Zealand.
Well, we can compare and contrast because it was only a few weeks ago that England were a disaster when it came to cricket. Yeah. So maybe Gareth Southgate can look at what's happened with the cricket. Brendan McCullum's come in and said, I want you to play your game. I want you, be freer and be relaxed in what you do. Whereas England footballers do not. They look frightened. It just worries me we're going back to that. And then we had that with England cricket. And then yesterday, it was just brilliant. And players like Johnny Bairstow, Ben Stokes, who's the new captain, have come in. A little bit of the story, so if you're not aware, so it was 299 from 72 overs was required for the second innings. So, you know, in the past, you'd think no chance. Joe Root went for 3, thinking this is not looking so good. Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes go into bat. 93 for 4, 206 required, and then at tea, 139 for 4. Now, Johnny Bairstow, after tea, he said that he'd had, I think it was a cheese and ham toastie, which whether that's, it's a little tip for the future, I don't know whether it worked, but that maybe did the job. 59 runs off 29 balls. Second fastest England century in Test history of 77 balls. The last one that was back in 1902, so I don't even know whether the ball was the same or the bat was the same, I don't even know. But it was just fantastic. There were 17,000 free tickets were given out at Trent Bridge yesterday. Just a terrific day of cricket, and it was a fantastic test. And whereas England, looking like we're the worst test side in the world, have gone to now looking like one of the best. So that's how things can change.
Paul, the World Cup qualification was complete last night with a couple of games. So we're all looking, you know, it's the festival of football. And just to say to you, here are the 32 teams, and you may be able to follow. Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, Netherlands, Group A. Group B, England, Iran, USA, Wales, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico and Poland in Group C. Group D, France, Australia, Denmark, Tunisia is your team in Group E. Spain, Costa Rica, Germany, Japan, Belgium, Canada, Morocco, Croatia, Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, Cameroon, and finally making up the 32, Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay and the Korean Republic.
Was that all done in one breath? That was unbelievable. And off the top of your head as well. I tell you what, one thing, though, one of the favourites of France. Now, if this gives us anything to try and cling on to, France have had a terrible time as well. So France have been beaten. They were beaten by Croatia yesterday. In the Nations League, they've not been good. And I tell you what we do have to realise, and a lot of people will think, oh, well, it's going to be going on about the fact that the players are tired. There's some players that have played over 60 games this season.
Yeah, but why are we playing this Nations League?
That's the point. I agree.
I mean, is this, you know, the European Championships? Are they? Is that the same thing, or have they replaced them? Or we still have European?
We got the Euros. We got the Euros every 4 years, and we have the World Cup every 4 years. This is in between, so it makes those friendlies a little bit more competitive. But it's a ridiculous time to play them. Yeah. So we're playing at the end of the season. Yeah, we've got a World Cup coming up. You've got players that have played 60 games. You know, maybe, hopefully, this is something to do with why we're not doing very well. Hungary, they haven't played as many games. There's a lot of great players that have played too much and do need a rest. So if that's anything to go by, then maybe we can hope that that's it. But Nations League, complete waste of time, I'm with you.
Just transfer news. Nunez joined Liverpool, 85 million quid. Manchester United remain in talks with Barcelona over Frankie de Jong. And Inter are pushing to sign Romelu Lukaku. Lukaku again. And so he's looking to leave Chelsea. And then Spurs, that Brighton wing-back.
Basuma,
Basuma.
Very good signing.
All good. That's the transfer gossip today. Thank you very much indeed, Paul.
Thank you.
That cricket was brilliant yesterday.
Did you enjoy the cricket? Yeah. Why were you not with us for the cricket then?
I don't know, sorry. I was listening.
OK.
Anyway.
Third test coming up. We'll do it then.
We'll do it then.
Yeah.
Stay with us. Coming up, we'll be taking you through the Wednesday newspapers today. We've got Clem Muldoon and David Bell.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The time's 7:38. Time to bring you up to date on the latest headlines.
The Department for Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment. This is going to happen on the 14th of July. From a total of £650, they will receive £326 instalment. Very precise, that is, isn't it? Head into the bank accounts of low-income households on benefits. The second portion comes in the autumn.
The Prime Minister is to face MPs for the first time today in PMQs since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes as not a big deal. The European Commission's threatened to take legal action.
Second suspect's been arrested over the disappearance of British journalist Dom Phillips and Indigenous expert Bruno Pereira, who went missing in the Amazon. Police in Brazil say the suspect was the brother of the first suspect arrested. Personal items belonging to the pair were discovered in a river at the weekend. For their second outing on the papers, we welcome back David Miller and Claire Muldoon. Claire, we go to the Times, page 15.
Yep.
A religious discrimination story. Tell us more.
Tell us more. Right, worker is sacked over crucifix in Dundee. He wore a crucifix around his neck, was sacked for doing that, and then was awarded £22,000 in a tribunal because it was found his religion and the wearing of his necklace were of deep and profound meaning to him. Now, if you look closer into this story, right, this chap was working in a wholesale turkey factory where you would think there was, big machinery plant here we're talking about. You would think, why on earth would he want to wear his crucifix around his neck where it could get mangled in the machinery? Which is my point, actually. So why would you? And what I don't get about, and you can call it a religious zealot, I don't know, right? But I don't like people making points over the wearing of religious icons or crucifixes for that point and for that reason only. But he knew that he shouldn't be wearing it. It shouldn't be shown. The only jewellery that was allowed in the factory was the wearing of a plain band.
So this is not so much a religious persecution, you're thinking. This is a health and safety issue.
Yeah, it was a health and safety issue, but it's been made a religious issue, and that's what I don't like. I don't see the point of it. If you want to wear your crucifix, wear it inside.
If you worked, in a department store and you were serving behind a counter and you wanted to wear a crucifix around you?
That's absolutely fine, and there was a case...
Except it's not fine, is it?
Well, it's not because of the British Airways debacle. Yes. Remember, about 8-10 years ago. And I covered that with you, actually. And I thought it was preposterous that this woman was told to remove her crucifix. It was her fundamental right, human right. We keep talking about people's human rights. And you know what? I'm just so over it at the moment. There's so many technicalities, there's so many legalities, that common sense is not prevailing anywhere in this world. And I'm over it. I'm out.
OK, you're out. Bye-bye. The first...
Do you mean that?
No,
Do you mean that?
Yes, he means it.
He means
Yes.
You be quiet.
Here's a sad
Means
story.
more time for me.
Here's a woman. Here's a woman.
At least he doesn't
who's
pretend.
71 years of age, and the Times is reporting on this story. And she was killed by an e-scooter. These one of these electric scooters that fly around.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have introduced that in a jocular way. Look, I've had a thing about e-scooters. It's a little obsession of mine ever since they started, because you now see them being used in all manner of inappropriate places, particularly over pedestrian bridges, on pedestrian pathways, and
shopping
so on.
malls.
Now, the extraordinary thing is the scale of these things. The only ones that are legal are those which are rented from an official supplier. They can't go at more than 15 miles an hour.
Which is quite a lot if you're hit by it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. But it gets worse. It gets worse. And the people who use them are supposed to have at least a provisional license.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question, because you might not have had a chance to study the papers as intently as I have, because you've had other things to do. How many illegal e-scooters have been sold in this country?
Lots.
Do you want to be more particular about that?
Lots.
1 million.
Oh, that is a lot. That's
I mean, I'm
lots
sorry
of
to
lots.
say, I think that is really extraordinary.
Well, OK, my alternate view on that would be, if there's 1 million being sold, there's clearly a demand, there's clearly an appetite. Why don't we make it safer, more legal? We've got a big problem with congestion, we've got a big problem with pollution. Why do we have to banish something that could be a solution to that?
Yeah, but then you would have to put a framework around it. They'd have to be insured, they would have to be licensed, and the police would have to take some sort of interest. You know, it annoys me, particularly in road traffic matters, that the police choose which laws that they will enforce and which laws they won't enforce. But this poor woman, this is a 14-year-old boy. He should have been nowhere near one of these things. She's on a pavement. He runs into her. She dies. To be fair to him, he does get in touch with the emergency services and sticks around. A lot of them wouldn't. But I don't think that people understand sometimes just how unpleasant some of these youths are when they're on
I wonder what
these.
cyclists' views are of these sharing the same road as they do. I wonder, are they in competition or seem to be more dangerous than a bicycle?
We mustn't slip into the thinking that cyclists are themselves paragons of virtue. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but certainly around where we live, these people humping around take away food. There was one going along the pedestrian path near where we are in St Catherine's Dock. And I said, "Slow down, mate. What are you going to do about it?" he said. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is Deliveroo, supposedly a respectable quoted company.
Well, there are other outlets, and if you're eating your breakfast at the morning, I'm very sorry about that. But anyway, yeah, it's a terrible thing. But the other side of this story is the impact on the 14-year-old boy.
I agree,
and, you know, and there's the human interest not only is the loss of this woman's life, which is horrendous, but that poor lad, you know, age 14. And, you know, we're sitting around here talking about it just now. It's so sad. Really is sad.
Tell us about this story, Claire, in the Daily Telegraph. A vegan veterinary nurse, she was fired for doing what?
For liberating a turkey. Can you believe that?
Well, where was the
close
turkey?
to Christmas Day. It was in a
turkey farm?
No, it wasn't in a turkey farm. She was sacked after she liberated a turkey and kept the bird at her university flat. The bird wasn't well, apparently, and she's a nurse, a veterinary nurse. Her name is Shakira Free Miles, and she's been sacked by the Royal Veterinary College for harbouring birds and harbouring animals in her flat, and because she's a vegan. And the judge said, I mean, we've spoken today about lots of things the judges have done, lawyers have done, changes in laws, everything enabling things. But this judge, Harjeet Gruel, concluded that her belief that she was morally obliged to take positive action to prevent or reduce the suffering of animals, which included trespass and removal of animals, and its manifestation was not a philosophical belief. And I think that's a way forward, because vegans seem to think that they have this religious almost, zealous almost view that their view is correct. Everyone else should be eating plant-based. There seems to be so much more microscopic detail in terms of what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating, and it's led by vegans.
Where I would sort of contest you a bit on this,
Yeah.
that more awareness about animal welfare, I think, is very, very important, and I think it goes on animal testing in this country, where they take, grown basset hounds and things and basically torture them to test out cigarettes and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I just think more people should be taking an interest.
Yeah, but she's not doing it for that. She wasn't doing it for that. She wasn't raising awareness for that, though, Eamonn. And, she was also found in Barcelona raising a piglet with the caption, "Meat spelt M-E-A-T, meet the victims. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws."
Okay.
So...
Well, that's the road to ruin, isn't it?
It is.
What did you make of the food strategy on Monday, David? This is the idea of compulsory veganism in prisons, in schools, 1 day a week at least, and then public...
Well, I tell you, I was on a shoot recently, right, where they've supplied catering.
Pheasant shoot? Or...
a television
TV
a television shoot. And they always provide lovely catering at these things, whatever, right? So you go for your lunch, and you cannot have a red meat option, or you cannot have, what else was there? There was like 2 vegan meals and a vegetarian meal. And I really just thought to myself, this was, it was either the BBC or it was the independent company that were making it, had signed up to this agreement that they would not be serving up meat.
Now, Eamonn, are you filibustering this discussion so we don't get on to the sport, or what?
Well,
no. Can I just add on there? But that is actually ironic, given the fact that the programme that you were shooting was a beautiful programme to celebrate the produce of Northern Ireland.
Anyway, what about some sport? Huh?
Right, I'm surprised you want to talk about this. I look at this and I think, really, I went to bed last night and I hadn't. I didn't. Well, I had to. I got to clock up the hours, So I went to bed and I just couldn't believe the result, that England lose at home 4-0 to Hungary.
Well, it's an atrocious result. You see, Gareth Southgate has been a bit lucky because he's got a very good team. He hasn't used them particularly well, but they've had reasonable results, not great results, as a consequence of which he is venerated and gets whatever he gets, 2 million a year. Mm-hmm. But it's perfectly obvious that none of the top Premiership teams would ever have Gareth Southgate as their manager. And finally, he's been found out playing 7 defenders against Hungary. When England are losing 4-0, he brings on another defender. At the end of the day, Gareth Southgate is every mother-in-law's favourite thought of a son-in-law. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, he's not very good at football. And I think at long last, the truth can be told that this man is not good enough to be the manager of a team that properly managed. We've got more outstanding young players in England than we've had in many a long year, but they're not going to do very well in November because he won't manage them properly unless, and this is what the papers are saying, unless what happens, of course, is that he resigns.
As opposed to what other England manager managed them well. That's all I'll say to you.
Well, I mean, there were a lot of good England managers in
better than Southgate.
Much better than Southgate.
Like
and
who?
Why do they have to be? Well, Terry Venables was much better than Southgate. Quote, but one. But why do they have to be English? This is a very narrow nationalistic view you take.
Who would you have?
Well, of those who are available,
Pochettino's on the market.
I would have Pochettino. Yeah, I think he would be. And Pochettino, when he was at Spurs, was very good at taking on developing young England players. At the end of the day, November, humiliation beckons.
World Cup.
What's going to happen?
Okay.
We have to leave it there. Do you know why? We've got to talk about sheds, David.
Sheds?
You're a shed man? Do you love your shed?
I'm afraid I don't have a view on sheds. We don't own a shed.
Well, we're
I
going to
have
be
no
speaking to
desire to
somebody
own
who
a
does.
shed.
Fair enough.
I deny any suggestion that I have ever tried to own a shed.
Good to know.
Yes.
Claire, David, thank you both very much. We'll see you again in the 8.
Bringing you up-to-date news-wise, the time 9 minutes before 8 o'clock, the Department of Work and Pensions is saying that 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment on the 14th of July. That will be £326 paid into the bank accounts of low-income households on benefits, and a second portion then of a total of £650 will follow come the autumn.
It's expected to be the hottest day of the year so far today, with highs of 28 degrees. The Met Office and the UK Health Security Agency have issued a level 2 heat health alert for large parts of southern and central England as temperatures are expected to reach 34 degrees later this week.
OK, this week is Men's Health Week. Men across the country are being encouraged to talk and speak about big issues they face.
And one organisation helping men to open up is the UK Men's Sheds Association, which actually provides spaces where men can get together and be creative.
OK, and joining us in the studio, this is Chris Addison. Chris is a member of that group, and tell us about your shed, Chris, and why you have it, what you do with it, and how it ties in with this Men's Health Week. Very good to see you.
Thank you. It started in the summer of 2015. I went to a meeting with a friend of mine was talking about carpentry tools, and I met other people there who were actually thinking of setting up a shed.
Yeah.
And that took place.
Could I ask you, what did you do? You talked about tools there. Now, that's
Yes.
sort of frightening. I don't mind the idea of a shed. Building one sort of scares me.
Yes.
What did you do? Were you handy with your hands before that, or?
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
you were.
I'm a qualified carpenter and joiner.
Oh, well, there you are. Easy peasy for you then.
Yeah.
Right, OK.
And we moved into premises in the centre of Reading, and we had to refurbish them. That took a few weeks, but it allowed people to come along,
Yes.
overcome loneliness, self-isolation, this sort of thing, and talk about ideas for little projects they might have, but also get together and talk about health issues as well.
It is a very male thing, a shed, isn't it? And look, gender stereotypes are so boring, but, you can't escape some of them. Some, for me, I love a utility room. I dream of the day I can have a utility room. Terribly sexist, but it's my happy place.
Sure.
Why do men love their sheds?
Because there's people who don't
They can
reach
escape.
them. Yes, they can escape from. We'll mention no names, but that's one thing. It isn't it. When I was a kid, I used to watch a programme on TV called Out of Town, and it was presented by a man called Jack Hargreaves.
Okay.
From his shed. You don't remember Jack Hargreaves?
I don't, I'm
Oh,
afraid,
look it
no.
up. Look it up on YouTube or something
Okay,
like that.
okay.
But he just used to sit in his shed with a pipe.
Okay.
And he'd lift up something and say, that's something that you put joints together with. You can do this, you can do that. I mean, I had no interest as a 12-year-old or whatever, but I was fascinated.
Of course.
Fascinated.
Absolutely.
By all of these.
A lovely dovetail joint is a beautiful.
Yes, a lovely dovetail. There's
It's a
nothing.
beautiful
a thing of beauty.
No
That's the
idea.
thing of beauty.
It is.
Do a dovetail joint.
What's a dovetail joint?
But the thing is, if you and me were in there,
Fabric
right?
conditioner.
The whole point of this is, well, you find that it is a more relaxed environment. I've been doing this recently because I've been in hospital and whatever, and I'm talking to friends who are similar ages, and normally we wouldn't talk about health, and because you don't want to admit to certain things, and they'll sit and they'll say to you, I have that too, that happens to me. Or people who are on tablets that you had no idea they were on tablets.
Well, the shed is an ideal opportunity for men to talk about this, and they can be quite open. I started a men's health group in our shed in Reading, and our first talk was on prostate cancer.
Yes.
We've had talks on sepsis, bowel cancer, first aid.
Yes.
And so really, it's helped men overcome a few fears and prejudices they might have about going to the doctor themselves, because that is one of the biggest things about getting men to talk about their health.
And do you have health scares or anything you'd like to talk about or mention? Or?
Well, I've had prostate cancer.
Well, it's pretty bad, yeah.
And
you're doing well, looking well?
I'm cancer-free.
Excellent, thank you.
And I had the prostate taken out in October 2015. And after the 6 weeks seeing the consultants, I took up Pilates. So I've been doing that the last 5 or 6 years.
In the shed, yes.
No, I do it at home, but I did go to a class and then lockdown came, so I did it on video.
What colour of shed do you like? Do you like the natural wood stain? I like a bit of Wimbledon green staining on my wood, personally. I do just have this thing. You know that Wimbledon green
now we
colour?
start thinking about, I'm getting interested. If I could turn it into a bit of a Wendy house, maybe baby pink,
and a
put
window,
some flowers and some curtains in the. No, I'm interested, but otherwise.
Well, we don't have a garden shed as such. It's more of a little warehouse. You need a lot of space. A couple of thousand square feet.
Oh, right.
So you've got woodworking, metalworking, and this sort of thing. Oh, it's fully equipped.
Fully equipped.
Oh, yes. Most sheds are, I think.
If man's home is his castle, what is his shed? His refuge?
Exactly.
The sanctuary.
That's right. And, you know, they can join together and, you know, discuss ideas, help each other out on projects, and that's really good.
If people are watching today, or there's partners of people watching today who think, I'd like to send my man to a shed, I'd like him to be there.
Kennel.
Quite. Kennel, that's the way you see it, isn't it? Yeah. So Chris is a member of the UK Men's Sheds Association. How do they join you, or who are you interested in speaking to?
Well, this Health Week, Men's Health Week, was the Bayer UK have initiated this campaign.
Yes.
Along with the UK Men's Sheds Association, and they've called it Shed by Shed, Rebuilding the Fight Against Prostate Cancer. So this is our theme, and prostate cancer obviously is something that can have no symptoms. So if men are thinking that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, that's a delusion. Because prostate cancer can get behind that mask, and therefore, you know, you might be just living your life but not knowing that you've got prostate cancer. Now, sometimes men might have waterworks issues. That can also be a sign of prostate cancer, but it also may not be prostate cancer. So prostate cancer is on a win-win situation. So men do have to go to their GP and get a blood test.
Good advice. Chris, you'd be pleased to know people are now sending us in pictures of their sheds.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, lots of people loving their sheds this morning. And Paulette Davies has said, wonderful conversations this morning on The Breakfast Show. All comments so relatable. Loving the garden shed comments, so true. Just a snapshot of some of the thoughts this morning. Thank you so much.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting to hear about that. So, cheers.
My pleasure.
And you stay well.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right.
Lots more coming your way, including the latest on that grounded Rwanda flight. That's after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight carrying UK asylum seekers to Rwanda is cancelled last night, minutes before takeoff.
Good morning. It's exactly 1 minute past 8 on Wednesday, the 15th of June. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The first asylum flight to Rwanda was left grounded last night following a last-minute ruling. This came from the European Court of Human Rights.
Home Secretary Priti Patel said the government would not be deterred from doing the right thing and promised to deliver the plans needed to control our nation's borders as she prepares for the next flight.
What will the government do next with its controversial Rwanda policy? We'll be live outside the Home Office.
And I'll be live from this airbase in Wiltshire, where last night's drama unfolded. The plane was ready to take off, then the dramatic intervention from the European Court of Human Rights. I'll be asking, what happens now?
Meanwhile, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced a refreshed case for Scottish independence. She says the referendum will take place late next year, with or without approval from Westminster.
8 million homes across the UK are to receive their first cash instalment as part of the government's cost of living payment plan. £324 will be paid to low-income households on the 14th of July.
Folks, you've been very busy this morning. Thanks very much indeed for your feedback by emailing us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You're also tweeting like crazy on at GB News, and you can subscribe to the GB News channel. That is on YouTube. You get the very latest there. Just another way of keeping in touch with us, which is a very good thing for all of us.
So our top story this morning, and the first UK asylum flight to Rwanda was cancelled at the last minute last night, just 30 minutes before takeoff.
The European Court of Human Rights, they blocked the removal of one of the 7 passengers on board. That then led to a series of legal challenges and the removal of the remaining 6 passengers on board.
Well, the flight is reported to have cost £500,000, and that doesn't include any of the legal fees that have been spent involved in both sides on this case.
The Home Secretary saying she was disappointed about all of this. However, she did add that preparation for the next flight begins now.
Well, let's cross now to the Home Office. Our national reporter Paul Hawkins is there for us this morning, and essentially it's up to them now to make the next move, isn't it, after this surprise twist from the European Court of Human Rights?
Yeah, morning Isabel, morning Eamonn, that's absolutely right. The government lawyers will be poring over this judgment now, trying to work out if the government could still charter those planes and still comply with the law. Remember, this is an interim judgment. That doesn't talk about whether what the government wants to do is illegal or legal. It's merely saying that if you do send people to Rwanda, we're not sure that they're going to be treated safely there, and there's no legal mechanism to bring them back if that judicial review next month decides that this policy is illegal. Now, the UK is a founding member of the European Court of Human Rights. It's nothing to do with the EU, nothing to do with Brexit. It has to act on final judgments from the court, not interim judgments. So they still may be able to charter those flights. The alternatives to not chartering the flights are to wait and to loosen the Human Rights Act. Now, that's a piece of legislation that effectively incorporates the articles of the European Convention on Human Rights into British law. It was mentioned in the 2019 Conservative Manifesto that they want to update the Human Rights Act so that legal interventions are not abused to conduct politics by another means or to create needless delays. So tweaking the Human Rights Act so they do comply with the European Convention on Human Rights would be another alternative. The final one would be to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And that would be very controversial because the only country that is leaving the European Court on Human Rights is Russia at the end of the year. It's currently in the process of withdrawing from the European Court of Human Rights. And so to do that, to follow in the footsteps of Russia, will be highly controversial. So probably the likely option is that they will try to tweak the Human Rights Act, but there may be some legal nitty-gritty, and this is where the lawyers are going over it this morning, where they could actually still charter those flights and still be legally compliant.
Very much, Paul. From your part of London, we're going to Boscombe Down, Ministry of Defence airfield there near Amesbury. The flight was supposed to take off from there. Now, Jeff Moody, our reporter, he was there last night. He saw what happened, and obviously no plane on the tarmac this morning, Jeff.
No, apparently the plane has gone to Madrid. It's all very, very quiet here this morning, which is nothing like it was last night. Last night we had snappers galore with telephoto lenses. We had lots of news crews all waiting for that shot of the plane taking off. Then suddenly, in a matter of minutes, the lights went out on the runway and the engines died down on the plane and everything was over. That was the dramatic intervention from the European Court of Human Rights. This morning, a sense of dismay that a court in another land can rule against our High Court here in Britain and against the UK government. Priti Patel, as we've been hearing, has said she's disappointed and she wants to look now at putting plans in place for the next plane to take off. But it's worth looking at the Conservative manifesto, which was released in the autumn of 2019, because in that manifesto they pledged to look again at the European Court of Human Rights. It's worth noting that that is nothing to do with the European Union. We're still very much a part of the European Convention of Human Rights, but the manifesto says that it will examine this to see whether it's fit for purpose. That examination will certainly be ratcheted up a gear this morning.
We're making a lot of the amount of people on board. A lot of people. You look at the size of that aircraft that was there last night, and you're thinking, what, 7 passengers on board? But I think the point is, Jeff, it's just even if there was 1 passenger, they still would have taken off just to make the point, just to get over the finish line.
Absolutely. I mean, they were very, very determined that this policy was going to succeed. As we know, there was a lot of high-profile criticism from the Church of England and also allegedly from the Prince of Wales himself. So it's been a matter of principle for the government to get on and deliver on what they said. And the policy does have a broad sense of appeal. Many people believe this is the right thing to be doing and the right way. And people are saying, you know, we've had this problem for over 20 years now. Successive Home Secretaries have not known how to respond to this, how to deal with this in a way that's fair to the people of Britain, but it's also humane. And this, acting as a deterrent to try and stop the people smugglers from bringing people into the country in the first place, is a policy that they're staking their reputation on at the moment. So yes, even if there had been 1 person, that flight would have taken off yesterday.
Thank you very much indeed. Let us know any updates you do get on that situation throughout the course of the day. I just want to reflect some of the views we've been getting in. I have to say, disproportionately outraged at what happened last night.
So most people outraged?
Most people really angry about it. I just want to read a small snippet of a couple who are happy with it, and then we'll go through the ones that, as I say, are the vast majority. Sandra says, I can't believe we're discussing sending people away like they are a wrong delivery. What happened to agreeing with people defending human rights?
That's an interesting analogy, isn't it?
Another one, I welcome the...
I was just going to say,
go on.
An interesting analogy, like an Amazon package or
well,
something like that. And suddenly we're saying, no, we don't want this, just send it back somewhere else. They are humans.
I welcome the intervention. We cannot allow a PM who's clearly broken the law to break international law as well. And lastly, Brett says, you can have your views and opinions, you can have British rights and laws, but human rights apply to everyone in the world that are human. World law applies to everyone in the world. Both times this includes the British.
So where does that leave us? We're going to go to the Shadow Minister for Immigration who joins us now, Stephen Kinnock. Stephen, good morning to you.
Morning.
Stephen, I'm just seeing some headlines here. The Guardian, for instance, headline there saying this European ruling throws the Rwanda plan into chaos. Where do you think it leaves it?
I think we should go back to first principles, which is what is Priti Patel trying to achieve with this policy? She says that it's about deterring people from crossing the channel on small boats, but there's absolutely no evidence that that would work, even if that flight had taken off yesterday. There are still hundreds of people coming across the channel. I was in Calais last Thursday. I spoke with people, asylum seekers who are trying to come across. They were aware of the Rwanda policy, and it wasn't really having any impact at all on their thinking or plans. So what you fundamentally have to do, I think, is judge a policy on whether it's going to achieve its stated aims, and this one isn't. And then on top of that, of course, there are very important human rights issues around it and the expense. I mean, the vast cost of that plane yesterday that was sitting on the tarmac, even if it had taken off, it would have been with a maximum of about half a dozen people on it, and it's cost the British taxpayer £500,000. So what the Home Secretary should be doing is focusing on the bread and butter issues of getting a proper security partnership with France and processing asylum applications much more efficiently and effectively in this country, rather than chasing headlines.
I mean, quite aside from the policy itself, what I think this has unearthed and has reopened is the huge debate about the role and the supremacy of British courts. I mean, the domestic courts had approved this, and now at the 11th hour, the ECHR have overturned that decision. And a lot of people, I think fairly, will feel that they aren't being governed by themselves. I mean, a sovereign country should be able to decide its own laws, shouldn't it?
Well, the really important judicial review that's happening now won't conclude until next month. And that's going to decide on whether the policy overall is legal. What I think the European Court of Human Rights was saying is we don't trust Boris Johnson to bring people back from Rwanda if that other case, which is concluding next month, finds that the policy is illegal. And the difference between the British courts and the European Court was simply one of, do we trust the Prime Minister to actually obey the law if the ruling next month is against this policy? And that ruling, of course, is in British courts. It's a matter of, not trusting the Prime Minister to obey the law. And I think there's absolutely mountains of evidence to demonstrate that this is a Prime Minister who doesn't have any respect for the rule of law.
Meanwhile,
I think that raises serious questions
about
talk democracy functioning. If you don't believe in the rule of law, you can't really have a functioning democracy.
But Stephen, I mean, you talk about the spiralling costs and whatever. A lot of those spiralling costs are from legal interventions and about protests with all of this. At the end of the day, we still have, and I'm sure you can't deny this, a major immigration problem. And I think just what people are saying is, show me something that is better than this. It's not that this may be a first choice with people, but, we ask you, we say, look, we have got this problem. What the heck do we do about it if it's not this?
Prime Minister said that, didn't he? Yesterday he said, well, have you got a better idea?
Well, so Labour has set out its plan very clearly, which is that we need a security partnership with France, which actually works upstream and breaks the people smugglers model long before these poor people are even getting to France.
In fairness, the government have tried that, Stephen Kinnock, haven't they?
Sorry, could you say that again?
I just wanted to say, on that particular point, the government have tried that. I mean, they've been ploughing money into the French authorities, trying to help them tackle the problem on their shores.
Well, I couldn't think of a worse government to try and have a dialogue with the European Union. Everything this government does is intended to destroy and burn bridges. Just look at what's happening with the Northern Ireland Protocol. So I'm afraid there is no relationship between the British government and the European Union that is going to be any use to us. We need constructive dialogue to get around the table, get a returns agreement in place as well. And then we need to start processing applications. And we're talking about spiralling costs, Eamonn. There are currently 37,000 asylum seekers languishing in hotels in this country. Thousands of those are Afghans who are loyal to British forces out in Afghanistan. That is costing the British taxpayer £4 million a day. But rather than focus on solving those issues, because the speed of asylum processing has halved since Priti Patel came Home Secretary, instead they're chasing headlines and just trying to kind of throw something to the backbenchers in order to keep Boris Johnson in his job. That's what this policy is actually about. And Stephen, really what the government should be doing is focusing on the bread and butter issues that need to be resolved.
I hate to tell you this, I hate to break this to you, but honestly, it's almost universal support for what Priti Patel is trying to do. And people are quite unappreciative of people like yourself standing in the way. Rightly or wrongly, I'm just saying to you, that is the mood in the room.
Well, Eamonn, politics is about choices. Politics is about doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is not just about our values. It's also about the outcomes that you achieve. And achieving your stated aim, we all want to deter these dreadful criminal gangs that are running the people, that are trafficking people. And we want to stop people coming across the channel and small boats and endangering their lives. Everybody wants to do that, but this is not the way to do it because it will not act as a deterrent. It is extortionately expensive, and I don't think it's in line with our values. Our values should be that when we have a problem to solve, we step up and we solve it. We don't offload it to a developing country 4,000 miles away, which, by the way, itself has a dubious human rights record. In 2018, 12 asylum seekers were shot dead by the Rwandan authorities
Stephen,
because they were hungry and protesting about lack of food.
OK, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for stating your case. Stephen is the Shadow Minister for Immigration. Your views, again, very welcome. Is there sense in what he's saying? Do you understand what he's saying? Are you sympathetic to what he's saying? Or do you still sort of draw a line in the sand and say the Rwanda flights are the way it should be?
Yeah, just really briefly, because I promised before we went to Stephen I'd read out some of those who are upset about the decision overnight. Janice says, I'm afraid our country is unable to move forward on anything anymore when small groups oppose a decision, protest, shouting and disrupting people's lives has become the norm. And Adam says, just when is the government going to act for the people who voted them in? The Church, Prince Charles, lefty celebrities and the ECHR do not run this country. Thoughts coming in.
17 minutes past the hour. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. The Prime Minister will face MPs for the first time today since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill has been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. The Prime Minister has downplayed the changes as no big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
Russia has told Ukrainian forces holed up in a chemical plant in the eastern city of Severodonetsk to surrender. Ukraine says more than 500 civilians are trapped inside the Ascot factory, where its forces have resisted weeks of Russian attacks. Moscow's called the defence senseless and vowed to evacuate the civilians through a humanitarian corridor.
Chemists will be able to spot potential cancer cases as part of a new NHS trial. It's hoped that by giving pharmacists more power to send patients for cancer scans and tests, it will help improve the speed of diagnosis. Hundreds in England will take part in a pilot scheme, and pharmacies will be invited to apply to be involved.
Now, Nicola Sturgeon unveiled plans towards Scottish independence yesterday and what she called an indisputable mandate for another referendum.
OK, well, Downing Street has responded. It says that it is currently not the time for another vote. I think the Scottish First Minister would disagree with that. And the focus should be on larger voter issues. So joining us now for the latest on this, our political correspondent Tom Harwood on this. I mean, the point I'm making there from Nicola Sturgeon's point of view, Tom, is she sees this as the perfect time, doesn't she, for many reasons?
She does. It's fair to say that she's under considerable political pressure from her own side, that she's saying that she would be working towards a referendum. She's allocated millions of pounds towards referendum planning. However, on the other side of things, it's not in her gift to deliver a referendum. The Scottish Parliament has many powers under devolution, but one of them is not altering the constitutional settlement.
I understand that, but she is saying, whether she gets Westminster approval or not, this is happening.
Which is an extraordinary position to take for someone who's criticising the government over whether or not they are breaching international law. Well, Nicola Sturgeon's proposal leaves open the door to herself breaching law, which is a pretty extraordinary position to take. But yes, just taking a step back there, as things stand, if this is going to be done in any sort of legal framework, it requires agreement between Holyrood and Westminster in the same way that David Cameron and Alex Salmond struck an agreement back in 2012. Now, that agreement was incredibly generous towards the terms of the 2014 referendum. David Cameron gave Alex Salmond basically everything he asked for, a franchise that began at the age of 16, a 2-year-long referendum campaign so that they could make their case in the most fulsome way possible. All of these things that Alex Salmond asked for were given so that that would be a legitimate referendum, so that no one could question the integrity of the vote, so that this is a vote that would last the test of time. And indeed, at the time, we heard people on all sides of that referendum saying that this is a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime decision. The First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, said it herself repeatedly throughout that referendum. And so the argument of the British government is here, well, a few years is not a generation. People are having children younger these days, but not that much younger. And 2014 is really recent history.
Yeah, the world has turned since 2014. Scotland has been taken out of the European Union, not something that they wanted to do themselves as a nation. That would be their argument, wouldn't it? The political landscape's changed, and therefore the generational argument goes out the window.
They do argue that there's been a change in circumstance. It's a new argument that wasn't mentioned at the time of the referendum. This is something that has been brought up subsequently as a reason to start partitioning the country. But interestingly, looking at the context in which the public in Scotland think, it's different from the context in which Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP think. Now, there was a time during the peak of COVID when those saying that they would like Scotland to be a separate country from the rest of the United Kingdom jumped ahead in the opinion polls. That lasted for a few months during the peak of COVID. But actually, ever since, those who think that the United Kingdom should remain united, who don't want to partition the country, actually have gone ahead in the opinion polls. So more Scots want to stay united with the United Kingdom than don't. And given that context, it's interesting to see that Nicola Sturgeon is moving forward on this. Of course, there have been questions over how much longer she will last as First Minister. She's currently the longest-serving First Minister that Scotland has ever had, and potentially this is something to shore up her own base rather than actually moving forward as a credible prospect.
OK, Tom, thank you very much.
With that, we'll go to the break. After that, we're going to be discussing today's news that pharmacists will now be able to refer you if you think you have cancer or to test you for cancer so that you'll no longer need to go to your GP. OK, doing that right after this break.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things are hotting up day on day. A warmer day today compared to yesterday. Just a cautionary note, UV levels and grass pollen levels will once again be high. And it's not hot and sunny everywhere. These weather fronts just again pushing into the far northwest. So at times today, the highlands of Scotland, the northern and the Western Isles will see some outbreaks of rain. There's a small chance of a shower over Northern Ireland too, but generally it's dry and sunny and a bit warmer than yesterday. Temperatures ticking up. Some cloud will develop as we go through the day, but still, as I say, most of us just seeing more of that strong sunshine. And it will lift those temperatures higher than yesterday's into the mid-20s, even the high 20s across the southeast. A warmer day for eastern and southern Scotland as well, and Northern Ireland. But it will still be quite cool with that rain across the far northwest, a bit breezy here as well. We'll continue to see some of that patchy rain across the Highlands and the Northern Isles through this evening and overnight. A small chance of a shower this evening for Northern Ireland, but for most, a very pleasant, balmy summer's evening and a pretty warm night. Temperatures holding up in double figures in most places. The nights are going to get warmer still, as are the days. Come tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures, again, mid to high 20s across the southeast. Again, for most it is a sunny day, but yet again, Western Scotland, the Northern Isles of Scotland, likely to see a bit of cloud. And also tomorrow, maybe a bit more cloud and some patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland, maybe later on into southwest Scotland. So again, a little cooler here, but for most other places, temperatures a degree or so higher tomorrow, 29 across the southeast. The coasts will always be a little cooler. Temperatures likely to peak on Friday. This area of high pressure is edging away, allowing hot air to drift up from the south. This cold front will introduce cooler air further north, but in the south, we could peak on Friday with temperatures at 34 Celsius. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:27. Still to come on this morning's programme, 90,000 stalking cases have been reported to police just this year alone. Shocking number. We're going to be speaking to a former victim. She was forced to get a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend. She joins us at 8:45 this morning. Also coming up in the next hour, asking you to grab your hats. Eamonn and I are off to Royal Ascot after the show. We're going to be catching up with our reporter, Ellie Costello. She's already there as racegoers make their way inside. We'll be talking to her just after 9 o'clock. And just remember, we'd love to hear from you. So many views coming in on Scottish independence, on the Rwanda plane being cancelled, whatever it may be. Get involved in that conversation. Email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews. Now, high street pharmacies will soon be paid to identify and refer customers who show early signs of cancer in an attempt to ease the staffing crisis on the NHS. The scheme will also allow pharmacies and nurses to write sick notes for people from July the 1st. Well, to tell us more about the new plans is Dr. Sarah Kyatt, who is an overworked GP herself, it must be said. This has got to be welcomed, hasn't it? Anything that can speed things up and improve prognosis.
Absolutely. So at the moment, we know that GP practices are really struggling to give face-to-face appointments and appointments full stop. And there are lots of people that we're worried about in the pandemic that have either not presented with many of their symptoms or have been lost to follow-up. And so anything that can ease that burden and also spot the signs of cancer early is so welcome.
Two things that worry me about that is, first of all, would pharmacies necessarily have that qualification? Would they just probably over-refer just as a sort of insurance policy? And secondly, aren't pharmacists already super overworked and struggling to meet demand?
Well, look, pharmacists are already trained in minor illnesses, and so it's just an additional training aspect that will be required of them. And it'll be a bit more of a pro forma type of thing. And so they'll be able to kind of, if you have this symptom, therefore you go down that route. So hopefully, yes, there may be some referring, but there generally is when it comes to those kind of things, because we'd rather over than under refer. Pharmacies are, of course, overworked as well, but they tend to not have such robust scheduling for all of their patients, so it's kind of more ad hoc, and it just means that they'll be able to see, hopefully, a few more of the overspill from GPs.
And do you think pharmacists could become more prevalent and used more heavily in rural parts of the UK, where we know GPs are just so overstretched, seeing, I mean, tens of patients, sometimes 50, 60 patients per day?
I think if anywhere needs it, probably is those rural areas. As you say, they are so overworked in those areas. We know that 90% of GPs are actually in cities. And so the reduction in number of GPs over the last decade has really taken a hit in those rural areas, and people there are struggling.
What are the things that are slowing things up for GPs? I mean, I was reading something about just writing prescriptions being so slow. Has that got harder? I mean, that's not new. Is it just the volume of people in this country?
It's volume. And so we know that admin takes up such a huge part of our day, because even though we see, let's say, 30, 40 patients a day, it's in between all of those that we have to do all the admin. And if you imagine, we could probably get about 150 or so prescription requests, daily. I suspect it's the number of patients that we're getting that's increasing those numbers, but also people getting more ill because they're getting older and they're living for longer, so need more prescriptions.
The ageing population.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's perhaps sitting their A-levels at the moment, planning on going to medical school in the autumn, or perhaps already in medical school thinking about where they want to end up? Do you think it's a good life being a GP? I mean, traditionally, or in recent history anyway, a lot of my female friends have thought it's very family-friendly, that you don't do the shift work linked to hospitals, you can have a family and a career. Is that still the case, or is it increasingly just too much stress on GPs?
I think firstly, if anyone wants to do medicine, I encourage it massively. It is one of the best decisions I've made. I love my job, but you're quite right. General practice probably isn't the work-life balance type of job that it once was, but it's still incredibly rewarding and worth doing.
And what about social prescribing? I was hearing about this as a new sort of science behind sort of overprescribed medication. I mean, is that a bit of nonsense, sort of people saying, go on, go for a run and I'll write you a prescription for it, or go and have a cup of tea with somebody to promote your mental health? Or is there actually some value to this rather than handing out antidepressants or, you know, weight loss medicine?
I mean, there is science backing it.
Okay.
Although it can be quite hard to get very robust studies because actually, as you say, the parameters can be so wide. It could be gardening, it could be tea, it could be, you know, befriending someone. So it's hard to get a very robust study to show it. But we've done pilot studies in Bradford, Bristol, Shropshire, Rotherham, and all of them have shown an improvement in quality of life, improvement in mental well-being and physical well-being. So I think there is benefit to it, and we know it's not something that will have side effects.
Yeah, you can't go wrong, basically. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, look, always lovely to have you in. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah.
So the time's just after 8:30. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to go our last hit on the newspapers today, and let's see what David Miller and Claire Muldoon have come up with right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
it's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:34. Time to bring you up to date on the latest headlines this morning.
Prime Minister will face MPs for the first time today since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. That bill has been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the agreement. Boris Johnson has downplayed the changes as no big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action.
The Department for Work and Pensions says 8 million households will receive the first part of their cost of living payment on the 14th of July. A £326 instalment will be paid into the bank accounts of low-income households on benefits before a second payment in the autumn. The Chancellor says the money will protect those who are paying the highest price for rising inflation.
A second suspect's been arrested over the disappearance of British journalist Dom Phillips and Indigenous expert Bruno Pereira, who went missing in the Amazon. Police in Brazil say the suspect is the brother of the first suspect arrested. Personal items belonging to the pair were discovered in a river at the weekend. We've got David Mellor and Claire Muldoon back for their look and their take on the papers. And David, I was just thinking how things have gone quiet in the news reporting front from Ukraine and,
yes, exactly.
and Russia and whatever.
Yes, nobody's really covering how much the Ukrainians are suffering and how far the Russian fight back involving the launching of lots of heavy ammunition at them is really, I mean, must be awful. But also there's this sense, which is true partially, that Russia is getting away with it. I mean, it's ludicrous that, for instance, Russia can be a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations and yet behave as they do. So I find it quite heartening, actually, that there is in the Times, page 31, Russian economy buckles as West's sanctions bite, implying that there will be an 11% fall in GDP in Russia this year, which, interestingly, the Russians themselves say it will be 7.5%, which is a hell of a lot, actually. And lots of other comments about, there are no films, so people don't go to the cinema. And there's a whole, although it's interesting, they try and fill a gap with Indian films and Chinese films, which is shows the Indians whose side they're on in all of this.
Yeah.
But I mean,
then you get institutions like Wimbledon who seem to fall over themselves in accommodating Russian wishes for the tournament.
And McDonald's reopening in Russia under
Really?
a different name.
McClinsky's. Exactly. Now, I think with Wimbledon, what they have actually stood firm, some of the others that haven't. This terrible thing with the Olympics, where they weren't Russians, i.e., under a Russian banner, but they were Russians.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've got the risk we all run with Putin is that at a certain point he will say something that might not be a big move in the direction of common sense, and people will grab hold of him with great enthusiasm. Whereas I don't think a civilized world can really encompass Mr. Putin any longer. But there you go.
Okay, and all of these things have an effect, I suppose, whether it's tennis players playing in tournaments or sanctions against businesses. They help build the pressure.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, Claire, Scottish independence, we're talking about it a lot. Nicola Sturgeon's talking about it a lot. She's saying, this is in the eye, your take on this one, but she's saying, constitutionally she needs Westminster approval on this, and she's saying, stuff that, I'm doing it anyway.
Well, she seems to be saying an awful lot, doesn't she? As she always does. She's full of her own narrative, full of her own importance, full of the fact that she doesn't get that most Scots do not want an independent Scotland.
Right, can I just ask you something? Right, so you're obviously Scottish, but you live in England, right? There's a lot of people up north who say, what's it got to do with you? She might say that. She might say that as well.
Oh, she probably does. Because unfortunately, Miss Sturgeon doesn't, she's not backwards and coming forwards and saying anything. My family still all live in Scotland, right? I've lived in London more of my life than I actually have in Scotland. However, I do see myself identify as Scottish, right? But notwithstanding that, she wants to break up the whole, the union. So therefore, I do have a vested interest. I had 4 kids. My kids could not go to a Scottish university for free university tertiary education because they were deemed English. This woman is racist. The whole SNP faction are racist. They don't like the English. And yet they're more than happy to take the Barnet bung. And more often, and the other thing that I really don't like, and I'm quite passionate about this, is the fact that she is not called to account. She's in bed now with the Greens that gave her the coalition that enabled her to take the power and have her devolved government. She's no more than a regional councillor, to be honest with you. And she's keep banging on about this narrative. She's produced a 71-page RM paper to go forward for the Section 30 that they need to trigger to get the independence vote. She wants to push that to 2023.
But Claire, what about the argument that the political landscape's changed since 2014? Scotland didn't want to leave the European Union. They were forced to because of other parts of the UK. Is there a defence there, then, that this is a chance to look again at the position of Scotland if they're not being able to
look
their will enacted?
I get your point, right? But there's more to it than the removal of Britain from the European Union. If the SNP, I don't want to refer to people as she's or he's because I don't think it's particularly nice, nor it's not proper. However, there has been no fundamental laydown of law or a fiscal policy that she would put in place to enable Scotland to become independent. Patrick Harvey of the Greens have now come out and said they don't want anything to do with nuclear armament, that they've got Coalport and Faslane. They don't want the North Sea oil. How the hell is this country going to stand on its own 2 feet? And they keep likening it to other European countries, geographically European countries like Finland, Denmark, etc. But she wants the arc of independence that the Republic of Ireland have. She'll push the country into dire straits that it is. And, people bat on about the fact that it's once in a generation. The mortality figures coming out of Scotland at the moment would actually push mortality rates, so badly. I just can't believe this.
I just want to really quickly read out one email on this because it is relevant to what Claire was saying. Colin says it's really boring that we start debates about Scottish independence on the basis that Scotland can't afford it. We all just watched a one-off tax on Scottish oil to bail out the entire UK.
Oh.
This is the position that creates the debate, not ends it. Should point out that a lot of the oil that is produced in and around Aberdeen isn't actually owned by Scotland, so it wouldn't be enough.
It's also
to make it
finite.
self-sufficient. Anyway, enough on the Scottish referendum. Let's talk about another referendum.
Yes.
This one in Whitby on second homes.
Yes,
David.
picture skew Whitby, where a 23% turnout voted overwhelmingly against second homes. I think this is sad if we're getting to this, because at the end of the day, Whitby is indeed very picturesque. But Whitby doesn't live by being picturesque. It lives by exploiting how picturesque it is. And they say 20% of the homes are being bought as second homes. I'm not sure whether we're supposed to deplore that, actually, because a dynamic economy requires people coming in. And this idea that people, because they think they're part of the community, they have rights that others of us don't have. Yeah, I mean, I've returned, the return of the native, as dear old Thomas Hardy had. I've returned to my old home county where I spent 20-odd years of my life, and I've now bought a place down there. And generally speaking, it's all gone brilliantly well. But someone said to me, why you got a second home? I said, where did you come from, mush? And it turned out it was somewhere north of the Thames, let's just say that. And I said, why are you telling me that I, as someone who was born here and whose generate family stretched back over several generations, can't return without someone like you having a go
and
at
a
me?
lot of people will understand and sympathise, but on the flip side, it is tragic when you see people who've been born and raised in these picturesque places who can't afford to live anywhere near their place of work. And a lot of these second homes stand empty for huge periods of time, particularly during the winter.
I'm with you,
Bit of a
Isabel,
ghost
on
town.
that.
That's not an opinion, it's just the alternate position. And it is a difficult quandary.
It is, but I think having got back into living in a community which does depend on visitors, depends on holiday makers, depends on a whole lot of things, there's no reason for this to become a source of stress and tension, because people only come to these lovely places because they want to be in a lovely place. They will spend a lot of money being there, thereby offering employment that wouldn't otherwise be around. There are plenty of places that are incredibly picturesque, but they're not natural places where people can earn money unless they take the money from the people who want to come and see these places.
Do you think they're biting the hands that feeds them?
Slightly.
We go to the Times. Let's finish on this. We've talked about this story throughout the programme today, Claire.
Yep.
NHS reform and the role of chemists and pharmacies, which seems to be forever increasing as to what they can do. We're now talking about
diagnosing or making cancer referrals?
I think this is really good news, actually. And I love my pharmacist. I think he's brilliant. He's really part of the community where I live.
Has he got time to do this, do you think?
I don't think he has the time, but that might be the issue. But, he's an exceptionally talented guy, and he runs with a great team of pharmacists. Don't forget, these are frontline, okay? These are the people who administer the drugs that have been prescribed by oncologists, by GPs, to help people get back to health, to aid people to health. They know if they're in their communities, they know their patients as well inside out. They'll know if a cough is getting worse, because that was one of the recurring things here of a symptom of a type of cancer. Pharmacists are great because they are first port referral sometimes. They see their clients, their patients regularly. So I think this is great. The only downfall I can see in it is the fact that, 1, they might not have the training, 2, they might not have the time, and 3, they might not even have the capability to refer, because the infrastructure won't be there to do it.
So why do it? They're not trained as doctors. I mean, they're technicians a lot of them.
Yeah, they are, but they do see a lot of people. I mean,
yeah, I know, but I see a lot of people during the day as well. You know, look, for what it is, it's a cost cut. It saves money.
You're absolutely right. Okay, that's without no shadow of a doubt, but we're going to have to do something.
Yeah.
We have got people dying.
Pharmacists now for everything. Community pharmacists, there's so many things. They do all sorts of tests, eye tests and hearing tests, and
do they?
They do. They do
vaccinations.
Yeah, there's so much they do. But listen, if they're geared up
they're
for it,
highly
they're equipped
trained
for it, fine. If they can do all of that, and if it relieves pressure.
And the relieves pressure, and the pressure has to be relieved.
But one of the things, the whole system. I mean, if you go along and you have a lump and you say, "Oh, I think there's something dodgy here," whatever. You then have to wait and you get an appointment with the GP, and the GP goes, that's probably something dodgy, which you knew already, and you had to wait 3 weeks to get your referral. And then they say, I'm now going to refer you to a specialist in this. Why can't you go straight to the specialist?
Or indeed, if you've got private healthcare and you want to just go and for example, my little one's got wonky feet, and I wanted to go and see somebody because we've got healthcare part of our deal here. But you have to go to your GP to get the referral, to go to your private, and it's just taking up time in the system. It just didn't need to be done. I could have just gone to the podiatrist myself.
Actually, quite a lot now. You can do your own online referrals to the consultants.
Can you?
Yeah, you can.
But then I think
online referrals.
Isabel makes a very good point there. If you're on an insurance policy, they won't pay for that because it has to go through this regime, this system.
Well, that's part of the regime. That might have to be taken a look at. But ultimately, there's quite a lot of people who don't have private health insurance, and this might actually be a lifeline.
Okay. All
much
very
needed lifeline.
Claire and David, a pleasure again talking to both of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Say that with such sincerity.
I mean it.
Missing you already, Stephen. Missing you already. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. 12 minutes now before 9 o'clock.
We'll bring you up to date with the latest headlines. The Prime Minister will face MPs in PMQs today for the first time since he announced changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill's been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the Brexit deal. Boris Johnson's downplayed the changes is not a big deal, but the European Commission say it breaks international law.
Russia's told Ukrainian forces holed up at a chemical plant in the eastern city of Severodonetsk to surrender. Ukraine says more than 500 civilians are trapped inside the Ascot factory, where its forces have resisted weeks of Russian attacks. Moscow has called this defence senseless and vowed to evacuate civilians through a corridor.
We're going to talk about a really important issue now, and one that I don't think gets enough coverage, actually. Campaigners have been criticising the Crown Prosecution Service for failing to crack down on harassment and stalking, which is on the rise.
Stalking cases reported to police, they've trebled, 90,000 in a year. But the proportion of offenders being charged has fallen to just 7%. We're now going to hear the story of Jess Robson. Jess is a founder of mental health support group Run, Talk, Run. And Jess, a victim of stalking yourself. You see, the thing is, often we hear this, Jess, and we associate it with celebrities. But I think it's very important to make clear this can happen to anyone.
Absolutely, yeah, and even beyond my own experience, heard it happen to other people as well. So, yes, not just for celebrities.
Can you tell us what happened to you?
Yeah, of course. So it's about 6-7 years ago. I came out of a hard relationship. Didn't identify it as being controlling at the time, but when I left that person, he did start stalking and harassing me. Went over a period of time to the point where I did feel scared enough to actually contact the police. There was an incident that actually made me go and contact the police. He actually ended up kidnapping me as well.
Dear, dear, dear. So, excuse me, how long was this relationship? I presume you're talking about someone who you felt you knew, you felt you loved at one stage.
Yes.
But did you really know them?
I don't think I knew the extent of their mental distress, if I'm being completely honest. I think that their mental health wasn't in a sound place, and I think that was kept from me quite a lot throughout the relationship, for sure.
And Jess, of course, that's no excuse for stalking,
not
just because someone's got mental health problems. Just explain to us what that was, how it demonstrated itself. What was he doing? Following you home, repeated phone calls? What was its sort of format?
Yeah, so I had a long list of phone calls from an unknown number pretty much every day. He would turn up pretty much anywhere that I was. I remember one particular day I didn't go to work because I was so sick with anxiety of, from what was going on, and still he knew to turn up at my home on that day when I should have been at work. So I was confused as to how he knew where I was.
How did he know that?
Well, I feel foolish, but he was following me using Find My Friends on my phone, which I then obviously turned off because I put two and two together. But still, he found ways to follow me after that.
Right. So you then have to go to someone who listens to you and believes this is serious and does something about this.
Mm-hmm.
How seriously is stalking taken?
I don't think it's taken seriously enough. I think that because of the kidnap and GBH that actually prompted me to go to the police, I think they did take it perhaps more seriously than other people kind of receive from the police. But it was a long process from the initial arrest to actually anything happening with court or procedures after. So I ended up dropping my charges.
Did you?
Yes.
And why did you decide to do that? Just because you wanted to move on and and stop thinking about it all?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, I still had a level of fear, and also had spent the entire relationship with him being sort of gaslighted to an extent where I thought, do you know what, if this goes to court, no one's going to believe me anyway. I felt a certain level of shame for letting it happen, even though that wasn't my fault. And I thought it would be easier on my mental health to just let it go.
Sure. So you did let it go. And what happened? Did it fizzle out, or what happened?
So when I initially contacted the police, they did put a restraining order on him. And I think that was enough to scare him away from actually stalking me further. So no, he did fizzle out after that.
Did that involve going to court? Because the reason I ask you that, my best friend went through this. A beautiful girl like yourself, a GP, a patient became infatuated with her, used to follow her home. She's got 3 little girls. She was frightened. Took it to the police and went to court to get a restraining order. But it was when she was in court, just queuing up to go through the security gates, she realised he was stood behind her. She could feel his breath on the back of her neck. The whole system was totally inappropriate for the sort of crime that he was in court for. I mean, did you have to go through that?
I didn't have to go to court. I'm very, very grateful to not have to go to court. I think, the nature of what he was arrested for meant that they could put that restraining order on him. It was only a 30-day one, but it was enough to allow me to feel safe.
Jess, that allows you to feel safe and that solves your problem. What I would worry about this man is he's then free to do this again to someone else. I mean, it's almost as if there should be a register and people should be warned about this obsessive behaviour.
I agree. It's something that I do feel guilt about. I have heard from another person who has had a negative interaction with this person. So, yeah.
Right. We're on here today. You're a founder of this Run, Talk, Run. What do you want to achieve, and what advice have you got to people who are listening to you, can maybe identify with this? Because you could have gone to the petrol station, filling up your car, and somebody in a car behind you decides they have a fixation with you. I mean, it could happen. We were trying to say it can happen to absolutely anybody.
Yes.
What are you trying to get out there? What is the message?
So with the idea with Run, Talk, Run is to create more safe spaces where people can share those negative experiences that they've been through, and to talk about the things that do trouble them, that are maybe hard to talk about in a circle of friends. You know, a lot of people feel like they don't want to burden their friends and family with especially things like domestic abuse or stalking.
Yeah.
And so actually to meet a group that's a support group where the intention is to talk about those hard things, I think is really needed. It just so happens running facilitates that nicely.
Okay.
And has this affected you going forward in terms of other relationships? Or would you say to people at home there can be a healthy relationship after having been the victim of stalking?
There can be. For me, it's taken a lot of therapy. It took me a long time to want to confront it in therapy, to stop being so apologetic to my partners that I've been with over the years and feel like I'm always in the wrong. But yeah, it is possible. Yeah, as long as you get the support.
See, I think sometimes you talk, I mean, I've had incidents in my life whereby you talk to people about it, and these are very serious incidents, but people tend to laugh at them because there's ridiculous, like there was a woman who attached herself to my car once. And like, you know, people sort of laugh at that.
The way you said it, it's not
But she did.
I know, she's saying it with a twinkle.
I'm not saying it, I'm just saying she spread-eagled over the bonnet and you know, and listen, you come out and what do you do? What do you do about that? You know, I had a 14-year-old girl who followed me on holiday, like, you know,
awful.
And that was, actually, I find that the scariest because I worried about her, I worried about her parents.
Yeah.
And you know, why she was doing what she was doing. And also, what could you do about it? You're abroad, a 14-year-old came up and said, oh, you're on holiday with my family, I was, you know, but I've come because, you know, I love you so much and I want to be here and whatever. I mean, this, and this stalking, what I'm trying to say is the nature of it takes different forms, and you felt threatened in many ways. I felt scared. I felt very scared about the whole thing. But I think it's important that people take you seriously, you know, and that's
Absolutely.
That's
yeah, no, it's scary. Especially if you have a level of compassion towards that person as well. You know?
Yes. Well, listen, you continue to heal. Thank you for sharing your experience, and continue running.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. God bless. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, stay with us after the break. We're going to be live from Royal Ascot, I believe, and I have inside info on this. Ellie Costello might be dressed for the occasion as well. She's gone to town in her Ascot attire. We'll be with her after this break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The first flight carrying UK asylum seekers to Rwanda is cancelled minutes before takeoff.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your company. 9 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 15th of June. Breakfast on GB News with me, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading our news this morning. The first asylum flight to Rwanda was left grounded following a last-minute ruling from the European Court of Human Rights. Home Secretary Priti Patel said the government will not be deterred from doing the right thing and has promised to deliver the plans needed to control the nation's borders as she prepares for the next flight.
Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced a refreshed case for Scottish independence. She says the referendum will take place late next year, with or without approval from Westminster.
8 million homes across the UK will receive their first cash instalment as part of the government's cost of living payment plan. £324 will be paid to low-income households on the 14th of July.
And thanks for joining in the discussions this morning. You've been doing your emails, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You've also been tweeting at GB News, and a lot of that today has been on Rwanda. It's been on the cost of living. Scottish independence again.
Dalmatians,
people. Dalmatians and dominoes. Sorry, those of you who have a nervous disposition or are affected by big
strobing
dots whatever it is, we just have to say we have mentioned this before. But I think despite what a lot of you are saying, I think Isabel looks well. I do think. So it's easy to mock. It's easy to do that. A lot of people mightn't be that brave. You sort of have that urge to press these buttons and see what
You're pressing my buttons
happens.
this morning, let me tell you. Keep your thoughts coming in. We love to hear from you.
Okay. I'll tell you what I want to talk about now. You heard there in the headlines, there are going to be a couple of payments to help people in really poor households deal with the cost of living. And they're going to be paid 14th of July, and then another one is going to be paid in the autumn, part of a 37 billion government initiative to help families deal with food, fuel, energy bills and all that sort of thing. Right, joining us in the studio, Laurie Laird right now to talk about all of this. You know, it comes in two tranches, right? £324 in July, and then the rest
at an unspecified date.
Yes.
It would be nice to know exactly
when it gets colder, presumably.
Well, let's hope so. And before we get to the hard stuff, I love your dress. I think it's absolutely splendid.
So
no, it does. I admired it when I walked in.
You wouldn't get away wearing it again, would you? Everybody will remember.
Be careful there. She looks fantastic.
But I know that. I'm her biggest fan. It's not me who's laughing at her.
On to the harder stuff. We've had this discussion before, and this is helpful. This is tied into the benefit system. But what would help people on benefits the most is a recurring payment.
Right. Smaller payment more often.
Yes.
Monthly, weekly, that they can rely, they know where it's going.
And something that's pegged more closely to inflation. Universal credit went up by 3% in April. Inflation's at 9%. Anyone, and this is the most vulnerable households, are looking at a 6%
they not make these things
cut.
Overly complicated? And I'm saying this, human nature being human nature, it's naive to assume that every person who gets this 650 quid is going to spend it all on their fuel or their food or whatever it happens, because people are human at the end of the day, and somebody will say, I fancy that handbag, or I want to go on holiday, or we're going out for the weekend, or whatever it happens to be.
Or even smaller things like that. Some families may want their heating hotter. Other families may want to put on an extra jumper and may want to use that money for other things like rising food bills. Food is rising right now. It's rising at an incredible amount. We're not going to really see the energy bill increase until it gets cold out. I haven't seen too much of a difference in my energy bill yet. I know I will come October when I like my house quite toasty, but
and
not every.
It depends if you're taking gas or oil.
Absolutely, it depends on whether you're on a prepaid meter. It depends on what sort of plan you were on to begin with. It depends on whether you can change suppliers and take advantage of one of those new customer discounts. So, allowing people to spend the money the way they want to,
the way they need to,
through the benefit system makes the most sense to me. This sort of one-off payment, well, for one thing, it doesn't increase borrowing over a longer period of time. It's a one-off thing. It's easy to budget. It also looks good in the headlines. Look what we're doing. We're throwing 320, whatever, under 400 pounds to each family. We're going to do it again at some other point. I think for a lot of families, knowing when that would be might be rather helpful.
It's cynical, though. The Treasury can't win. I mean, it's a big amount of money. And, you know, they might have been criticised for doing nothing, but they are. They're giving a big handout.
Yeah, but I think it's, Isabel, as I say, human nature. If that comes through the post to you and you suddenly say, oh, you know, my daughter always needed a new dress or bicycle or whatever it happens to be, but that's not dealing with what it's supposed to deal with. But Laurie's saying the point is that if you knew every week you were getting an extra 25 quid.
It just makes it easier to allocate, easier to budget. You make a very good point. It is a really chunky expenditure. I would argue, Rishi Sunak would argue differently, but I would argue that the Treasury does have a bit more leeway to borrow. Interest rates are going up, but they're not going up to the sort of levels that we remember 10 years ago.
I think the Bank of England are meeting today.
They start today. We'll get a decision tomorrow.
Okay. What do you think?
Bank of England's in a very tough situation here, and economists are really split. The feeling is there are 9 members who are debating interest rates. Feeling is a couple would like to keep rates where they are because the economy is really slowing. In fact, we contracted in April. There are another camp that may want a 0.5 percentage point rise. We've been looking at 1/4 percentage point rises up till now. The majority, a plurality will win here. There may not be a majority. My guess would be 25 basis, a 1/4 percentage point increase.
And what will that mean for ordinary people? I mean, is there anything people should be doing between now and tomorrow, whether they've got credit card debt to pay off or if they're remortgaging their house quite quickly, trying to
I'm an economic correspondent, and I'm getting a mortgage right now. So that sort of demeans everything I say. You may not want me back after that. But I think there's very little that can be done. We do have to keep in mind a 1/4 percentage point hike is not that big a hike. Interest rates are much, much lower than they have been historically. Before the financial crisis, we were about 5.5%, 6%. I don't think there's any chance that we're going to get that high, despite the fact that inflation is so very high. But anyone who has credit card debt ultimately is going to feel this. Mortgage rates or mortgage payments are going to go up a little bit, but they should keep going up for a while. I think the Bank of England has a couple of more moves left in it, but politically it's really tricky. They're raising rates. The economy is slowing. We could be in a recession quite soon.
We're looking ahead. We're seeing headlines with a lot of strikes planned, particularly in transport industry, airlines, the rail unions as well. They're not alone. A lot of people will say, I haven't had a pay increase in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or whatever. But it's still not looking good. Whoever justified those pay rises may be, it's just going to add to the whole inflationary process.
Well, it's mostly public sector workers who are going on strike, and that's only about 20% of the workforce. But looking at public sector pay rises, they're absolutely paltry. So we got some earnings data out yesterday. Average earnings before adjusted for inflation were up almost 7%, a little bit less than 7%. That's whole economy. Public sector workers up 1.6%. Again, inflation at 9%, that doesn't look particularly good. So you can have some sympathy for their plight.
But again, both sectors have had big bailouts from the government during the pandemic, and their jobs probably wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for that.
That's a very good point.
A lot of people would say, you know, we can't just keep handing cash to them.
I think the unions are in a very interesting position because if you look at these numbers we're discussing, you do have some sympathy. How far do they go and play this? How far will public opinion take them? The average train driver, we're going to see these massive train strikes next week. The average train driver is on $67,000 a year. It's not amazing money, but it's much more than absolutely. It's much more than the median.
You've got to look at it in context of the hours they work, the responsibilities they have, and whatever. I don't like when people just look at figures and say, "Oh, that he or she's doing well." You always have to look at the job and what's in.
That's fair enough, but to retain public opinion, most people will look at that number and say, "Well, wait a second, I'm not on that."
Yeah.
So, that balance for public sector workers will be very, very tricky. The other difficult thing is that we're not using transport the way we used to, so fewer people are inconvenienced.
Yeah. Laurie, we've got to go, but thank you very much indeed for that and outlining that and explaining that. We'd just like to keep that at the forefront of people's minds. Laurie Laird is an economics commentator. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, it's one of the highlights of the British sporting and fashion calendar and the start of the summer season. Royal Ascot has returned for the first time since the pandemic.
So you can expect to see plenty of well-known faces there, royal guests. There's big hats, and that's just the men. And then, of course, there's the added thing of horse racing. Well, that's all going to happen over the next 5 days. So let's go there. Ellie is dressed, Ellie Costello, to the nines. Oh, what a hat. You look beautiful. You look stunning. I wish I was going with you today.
Hello to the both of you. Yes, I think it's pretty safe to say I haven't dressed like this for work before, but very, very excited to be at Royal Ascot 2022. Like you said, it's the first time that this has been back properly since 2019. Obviously, it was cancelled in 2020. Last year, way fewer people were allowed to come here. So this time, we are ready for a party. We've got all these people arriving. You might be able to see behind me. We've got loads of security already piling in here. We've got the waitresses and waiters there setting up the bar. Very much looking forward to the party today. We've even seen champagne and glasses being walked through here, so it is going to be a fantastic day in really fantastic weather. And yesterday was just a sign of things to come. We saw so many stars. We saw royal guests, as is suggested in the name Royal Ascot. We had the Prince of Wales, we had the Duchess of Cornwall, Zara and Mike Tyndall, and there's going to be more sporting action and fashion, massive hats here today as well.
And the horses and any of that. It's so often the case, isn't it? We all get, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. We love it. We love the races, but the horses are almost secondary.
100%. I would be lying if I said that I hadn't planned the outfit for the last few weeks. I'm like, I forget that we're actually here for the horses, but there is going to be lots of sporting action here today. Now, if you are a betting person, and I am a betting woman, then I've been doing the research for you today. Keep your eyes on the Queen Mary Stakes at 2:30 today. There's a horse racing in that called Manhattan Jungle. Now, she's won her last 3 races, and her owners won the Queen Anne Stake last year. So I think it's a winning combination. The odds are 33-1, not great, but I think we could be on to a winner with that one.
And are you going to stay for the meet itself then today? Will we see you later on?
Absolutely, yes. We're going to be here all day today. Very much looking forward to who's going to be here. I've heard that TV stars Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster could be making an appearance. That's going to be an absolute highlight on day 2, if that's true. And also, we've got the royal carriage procession at 1 p.m. We don't know exactly who's going to be in those carriages, but we're hoping, of course, to see Her Majesty. She wasn't here yesterday, but we know that she is a horse lover. She's got 10 horses racing here in the next 5 days, so she has got a vested interest to be at Royal Ascot. It is only 15 minutes away from Windsor Castle, so hopefully we see Her Majesty here with you, Eamonn and Isabel.
Majesty beside me here must go now. Come on, you've got to get
running away now. Yeah, I'm going to go get my hat on.
She's going to get her hat on.
That's actually one of my favourite things, is when I see you, Ellie, we've got to try and do an air kiss with our giant headwear. It's always one of the most ridiculous things at the races.
We do.
I don't want to be late.
I'm going. Right, I'm going. I've got to go get ready.
So she's the way to do that. Do you want to give any sort of credits to your designers or your milliner or anyone there about the outfit? Isabel was very impressed with it.
Oh yes, I've actually got the name of the person who lent me this hat, and she lent it to me especially because it was going to be on GB News. I don't have the name of it, but I'm going to tag it on Twitter and Instagram later. But thank you very much. I love this hat, and she actually told me what to wear it with. She said, go all white with gold accessories, so I very much took the tips.
Hello, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you later. And at the time at 9:15.
See you later.
Let's bring you, thank you. We'll bring you up to date now with what's happening news-wise. And the Prime Minister will face MPs for the first time today since he announced plans to change the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bill has been criticised for giving ministers the power to unilaterally scrap elements of the post-Brexit agreement. The Prime Minister has downplayed the changes as not a big deal, but the European Commission has threatened to take legal action. Russia's told Ukrainian forces holed up in a chemical plant in the eastern city of Severodonetsk to surrender. Ukraine says more than 500 civilians are trapped inside the Ascot factory, where its forces have resisted weeks of Russian attacks. Moscow calling this defense senseless and have vowed to evacuate civilians through a humanitarian corridor. Pharmacists will be able to spot potential cancer cases as part of a new NHS trial. It's hoped that giving chemists more power to send patients for cancer scans and tests will help improve the speed of diagnosis. Hundreds in England will take part in a pilot scheme, and pharmacies will be invited to apply to get involved. What we will do is take a break there. After that, all the entertainment news, including the latest Friends star to release their memoirs. Kinsey Schofield with all of that after this. Hope you enjoy.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things are hotting up day on day. A warmer day today compared to yesterday. Just a cautionary note, UV levels and grass pollen levels will once again be high. And it's not hot and sunny everywhere. These weather fronts just again pushing into the far northwest. So at times today, the highlands of Scotland, the Northern and the Western Isles will see some outbreaks of rain. There's a small chance of a shower over Northern Ireland too, but generally it's dry and sunny and a bit warmer than yesterday. Temperatures ticking up. Some cloud will develop as we go through the day, but still, as I say, most of us just seeing more of that strong sunshine. And it will lift those temperatures higher than yesterday's into the mid-20s, even the high 20s across the southeast. A warmer day for eastern and southern Scotland as well, and Northern Ireland. But it will still be quite cool with that rain across the far northwest, a bit breezy here as well. We'll continue to see some of that patchy rain across the Highlands and the Northern Isles through this evening and overnight. Small chance of a shower this evening for Northern Ireland, but for most, a very pleasant, balmy summer's evening and a pretty warm night. Temperatures holding up in double figures in most places. The nights are going to get warmer still, as are the days. Come tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures, again, mid to high 20s across the southeast. Again, for most it is a sunny day, but yet again, Western Scotland, the Northern Isles of Scotland, likely to see a bit of cloud. And also tomorrow, maybe a bit more cloud and some patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland, maybe later on into southwest Scotland. So again, a little cooler here, but for most other places, temperatures a degree or so higher tomorrow, 29 across the southeast. The coasts will always be a little cooler. Temperatures likely to peak on Friday. This area of high pressure is edging away, allowing hot air to drift up from the south. This cold front will introduce cooler air further north, but in the south, we could peak on Friday with temperatures at 34 Celsius. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping it.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
(20 past 9). A very good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. This is Breakfast on GB News, and now it's time for the latest showbiz news. We go to Los Angeles. Kinsey Schofield there for us this morning with us. Kinsey, good morning. Very nice to see you.
Good to see you too. My face looks huge on the screen. They must miss me in studio.
Well, I'm back in business now after I didn't get to see you during the Jubilee, but seeing stories knocking about, as in Amber Heard. She's given a big interview. What's come out of that that's of note?
Well, you know what? I watched you yesterday and I completely agreed with everything you said. And you talked a little bit about how this might affect this interview that she's done with NBC, how it might affect Amber's career going forward. And within the last 24 hours, rumors have surfaced that Amber has been completely cut out of Aquaman 2. Now, we heard during the trial that Amber, that role had been minimized. She talked about that on the stand, how she watched the role be minimized as she was filming it, and she was removed from page after page. Upon the rumor starting to circulate yesterday that she was removed from Aquaman 2, her representation came forward and said that it was just an ugly rumor. But Eamonn, I have to tell you, TMZ, some of these big trade magazines are reporting that Warner Brothers does want to distance themselves from this woman. Millions of people have signed a petition saying that they will not see the film if she's included in it. And Warner Brothers at this point in time would not make a statement saying that they removed her from the film because, quite frankly, they don't want any involvement in the chaos surrounding her. We know of one interview. We don't know how many more there will be, but Warner Brothers is just not wanting to have any association with her and the chaos that is this trial right now. So she very potentially could be recast in Aquaman, despite her representation saying that's not true. That's just not something Warner Brothers would admit to at this point in time.
Tactic for addressing this is to do a number of high-profile interviews, and she's done one national one yesterday.
Yes, but I mean, it's like word salad when she's talking to these, hosts and these anchors. For instance, she was trying to justify Johnny charming the jury by saying that he'd convinced people that he'd had scissors for hands. I mean, I could tell she's trying to be funny and trying to joke, but you're insulting a jury, you're insulting everybody that watched the trial and sided with Johnny Depp, also calling some of the people that testified on Johnny Depp's behalf randos. You can tell that she's repeating private conversations maybe that she's had with her friends or her core group. She's repeating them in these high-profile interviews, and it's not necessarily the right tone.
I wonder what tone we're going to get. There's an autobiography coming out from the Friends actor Matthew Perry.
Yes, isn't he so charming? On my way home from London, I watched somebody in the seat next to me watching Friends. And I thought, what a legacy to have shot this show 20 years ago and for people to still be watching and loving your program. I mean, that's incredible. This it's called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And Matthew Perry stresses that he's going to talk about the highest highs of his life and career and the lowest lows. He said everybody else has talked about his past. It's, maybe time for him to set the record straight. It's going to be coming out in November of this year. So that's something very much to look forward to. But he's still such a source of speculation in the States. We see him very rarely. He doesn't work as much as some of the other Friends stars. So people are certainly curious about him and looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about him personally.
A little bit more about Gwyneth Paltrow and Brad Pitt, who at one stage in life were engaged. Just very briefly on this one, Kinsey, if you could.
Yeah, it's Gwyneth Paltrow and Brad Pitt teaming up for God's True Cashmere. It's a Goop favorite. Gwen said in this interview she loves Brad, and it's actually really, I'm wondering if this is a strategy because Brad is going head-to-head with Angelina Jolie, similar to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and I'm wondering if this is Brad partnering with an ex and being buddy-buddy to show the world that he's not the bad guy in this. That's just my little intel, but really sweet interview with Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow where they admit to loving each other and still being friendly with each other.
Well, we always like to hear your intel. Thank you very much indeed, Kinsey Schofield, live there from Los Angeles. Always a pleasure. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Folks, we've got to leave the show there as well. Back again tomorrow, Thursday, from 6 a.m. All we need is your company. Hope you can join us. Coming up next, Tom Harwood with The Briefing. Thanks for watching.
Good morning, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Things are hotting up day on day. A warmer day today compared to yesterday. Just a cautionary note, UV levels and grass pollen levels will once again be high. And it's not hot and sunny everywhere. These weather fronts just again pushing into the far northwest. So at times today, the highlands of Scotland, the Northern and the Western Isles will see some outbreaks of rain. There's a small chance of a shower over Northern Ireland too, but generally it's dry and sunny and a bit warmer than yesterday. Temperatures ticking up. Some cloud will develop as we go through the day, but still, as I say, most of us just seeing more of that strong sunshine. And it will lift those temperatures higher than yesterday's into the mid-20s, even the high 20s across the southeast. A warmer day for eastern and southern Scotland as well, and Northern Ireland. But it will still be quite cool with that rain across the far northwest, a bit breezy here as well. We'll continue to see some of that patchy rain across the Highlands and the Northern Isles through this evening and overnight. A small chance of a shower this evening for Northern Ireland, but for most, a very pleasant, balmy summer's evening and a pretty warm night. Temperatures holding up in double figures in most places. The nights are going to get warmer still, as are the days. Come tomorrow, we're looking at temperatures, again, mid to high 20s across the southeast. Again, for most it is a sunny day, but yet again, Western Scotland, the Northern Isles of Scotland, likely to see a bit of cloud. And also tomorrow, maybe a bit more cloud and some patchy rain trickling into Northern Ireland, maybe later on into southwest Scotland. So again, a little cooler here, but for most other places, temperatures a degree or so higher tomorrow, 29 across the southeast. The coasts will always be a little cooler. Temperatures likely to peak on Friday. This area of high pressure is edging away, allowing hot air to drift up from the south. This cold front will introduce cooler air further north, but in the south we could peak on Friday with temperatures at 34 Celsius. Bye for now.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're